Are we ready? Okay, so let me ask you guys a question. Why don't we? What's wrong with the center? How come you guys are so spread out? It'll be easier on my neck. Okay, so I have a few questions before I start, because it's been a long day already. I got a few questions. When you come to the knowledge of the Torah, man, if you guys can come to the center, that would be awesome if you would. That will help me a lot, honestly. If you don't want to come and you want to rebel, I understand. I won't hold it against you. I don't spit on people. I took a shower. So the questions are these. Would you agree with me that temple research is not the cup of tea for everybody? You know, there are certain things in the temple that may not be of interest to you, and I understand that. But at the same token, if I could create the purpose and understand your function, then it's going to create the desire to understand how to do the function. Then you're going to need the blueprint that's going to help you understand how to do it. And that's what really the tabernacle really is. Tabernacle is to point humanity back to Eden. That's what the tabernacle was. Now, can you imagine being part of Israel and being the only country or the only people whose God was present in their camp? I mean, think about it. So, one of the things that I never quite understood until recently is the importance of sacred spaces. That's something that we don't quite understand in our culture here. But in the Middle East, as well as in Asia, people understand sacred spaces. But let me give you an example of a sacred space in your home. Your marriage bed is a sacred space. I mean, in my house, even if my kids want to come into my bedroom, they got to knock on the door. But they live there. But they have to, that's a sacred space. There's a threshold. Anyone who invites, we invite to our home, they do not have the right to just walk into my bedroom anytime they want. That's a sacred space. That's why when I stay with people, I always say, okay, first of all, if they invite me to eat, I just stand there until they tell me where to sit. Or, where do you want me to? I want to know the rules. It's like, okay, where do I sleep? What can I use? Where I have the freedom of domain? You know what I mean? Where can I go sit? I also pay attention as to the head of the household. What is his favorite seat? My wife had done something that when we began to do this, that we got married and we've been following Sabbath. She grew up following the Sabbath in the Adventist church, and I was already in the Torah, but she created this environment of sacred space. So we began she bought a cup, a wine cup for the Kiddush that no one drinks the whole week of that thing. Only I drink from it. No one. She doesn't even drink from it. And I have a seat at the table that even when I'm home, unless I give the honor to my oldest, but even when I'm not home, they don't even let anybody sit there. And I remember when she bought the cup, she goes, "This is for my king." And I felt like, oh my gosh, this woman is treating me like her king, really? But what I did, it provoked me to say, wow, if she treats me like that on Shabbat, then isn't that a reciprocal thing? I'm learning in the physical, the relationship and the spiritual here. So now it's like, it's a really cool environment on Shabbat because I desire to be there because they welcome me as somebody with honor. And if that's the case, it's a microcosm of the relationship that the Creator desired from us. Him being the ultimate king and how we're supposed to set time aside for Him. So the question is this: if you do not understand the temple or care to study it, hopefully after today, you felt compelled to understand your function within the body. and purpose. So if you want to understand your function and your purpose, then you have to find out how you learn to execute it. It's like I was talking to my brother in the back. I forgot his name. I am so sorry. But I told him, I said, you find someone and you say, someone who doesn't have a job. Says, so get a job. And he goes, well, I don't want to get that job. But then ask him this question. What is your passion? And then get him a job in which he can work within his passion. He's going to stay there. It doesn't matter what it is, because success is not determined by money. Success is determined by purpose. See, we lost that. I remember the days when success was having a stable family, having kids. They go to college, they get jobs, they get married, we have grandkids. Success. I serve my purpose to multiply it and be fruitful. Keep the chaos away from the family. You know, in the beginning there was divorces in families, old school families, and that was chaotic. Oh my God, I failed as a father. My son got divorced. You know? The whole idea of the tabernacle is to show not only Israel, but show the nations that this is a sacred space that the nations do not deserve to be in. It comes with a cost. It comes with a cost. It comes with a commitment. I mean, even like I was saying earlier, even going to the bathroom was a commitment. You have to make sure that you don't defile the holy space of the Lord, sacred space. So the feasts are sacred space. The Sabbath is sacred space. You know, and we have to be careful. The temple and the tabernacle is sacred space. Because we're so removed from the Middle East and the ancient world, we don't understand these principles, you know. But try to go somewhere where you're not allowed. There's a sign. Do not trespass. That is a sacred space for that person on the other side. If you come uninvited in Florida, we can shoot you. Feel bad for you guys. In Florida, I could put a sign, do not trespass. If you come in with evil intent, I could defend myself. If I could prove that I have reasonable doubt to defend myself, that I was in danger, and me and my family, I could exercise judgment to do so. Now, this is in the regular domain in our homes. Imagine the temple. When the Lord has established perimeters of holiness and sanctity and sanctification. And he says, if you want to approach me, you do it the way I say. I want to dwell among you, but it comes with a cost. You can't be like the nations. You can't act like the nations. You cannot have anything or any other gods other than me. In other words, I chose you to be my image, to be the idol. And people hate to hear that word, but that's what the word means. Selem, the idol or the image of, So you're not supposed to have anything, because I created you for the purpose of representing me on the earth, not for you to get the worship. That's where the function of priesthood comes into play. The priests were in the image of Adam, and they have the Spirit of God so that they can direct people to Him. Not so they can be famous, so can they make a great name, so they become, no, that was not the intent. The intent was for the Lord to constantly have a people that He chose in His sacred space, so that Israel will recognize that should have been us, and because of idolatry, we renounce again to enter the garden like Adam. The story keeps repeating itself over and over and over. So, you see a beautiful picture of the tabernacle. The cloud is what makes the tabernacle a home. I mean, if I teach the tabernacle now, it's completely different than ever before. But what I'm doing today, I'm not going into all the structure and all this stuff. I would like to come back someday, or maybe you can come to my course in next January. We have a course. We have a 4-day course, 5 classes a day. We got 4 teachers. Each teaching is 1.5 hours. We provide the food, you show up. In Florida. It comes with a cost. It comes with a cost. But the beautiful thing is, like, for example, if pastor will send a few of the teachers, you pay the $260 for the course. We give you a workbook. We take care of the food except for one dinner. And then, we teach you all day. And then you can bring it back and teach the congregation at the level that they can absorb it. So we are equipping one another. And next year we're going to be talking about this topic. We're going to be talking about the liturgy. We're going to talk about Messiah in the liturgy, Messiah in the New Testament language of the temple. We're going to examine all this stuff, trying to convey to you how important it is. You know? So Orlando next January. I hope some of you can make it. We had like 90 people this year. It keeps growing every year. All right, so we have Emmanuel. We have the tabernacle. And now this is the home of the Creator, surrounded by Israel. Emmanuel, God with us. You got to go. When you have a chance, go look through the Bible. It says everywhere, every verse that says, I want to dwell among you. It is incredible. The more you look at it, it's like the Lord is desperately, I mean, I hate to use it this way. I don't mean it in a bad way. But you will think that He's just desperately looking to just hang out with us. And I'm going like, it gives you that impression. But really the whole idea is that by Him wanting to dwell with us is fulfilling His oath and promise He made in the beginning. He can't break His word. He created humanity for the purpose of having people who can represent Him, and He desires to have fellowship with you. Think about this. The Creator of heaven and earth, of the cosmos, He wants to fellowship with you. He wants your home to become a sacred space that He can visit on the Shabbat. And your house can become an embassy for the presence of God. He can, when you dedicate the fences or the gate and the door, you put the Shema. You are basically saying, Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one. Blessed be His name and His kingdom forever and ever. You just declare the oneness of His name, the holiness of His name. You declare your house the embassy of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Anybody comes through, you know, do you understand that people, I will consider it this way? In Israel, they'll listen to this, they'll laugh at me. But in reality, if you think about it from a legal perspective, and more or less, when you put the mezuzah on the door and in your gates, anybody comes in through that door, that's like an embassy. You know, that threshold becomes like sovereign territory of the God of Israel. If you think about it, I mean, you have embassies all over the world. And by the way, when they make an affront, when the Muslims, they go into the embassies, they know what they're doing. They can't attack America right now directly, so they go to the embassy. Because the ambassador, you kill the ambassador, you are now making a declaration of war against the king itself or the president. So if we are ambassadors of the kingdom, the enemy wants to kill us. If he touches you, he doesn't have the right to take your life. He didn't create you. That's why murder is such an abomination, because you don't have the right to take somebody's life that you didn't give. You have the right to defend yourself, or not to take somebody's life. That's why you have murder, and you have all the different type of penalties for, you know, involuntary manslaughter. Right? It's intent, right? That's what says the difference, intent. So what is our intent as the body of Messiah? What is our purpose? See, I could come over here and try to impress you with all kinds of information about the temple. And I have a good teacher. I think we can do that. But again, if I don't show you your purpose and your mandate and what God has planned for you, that He wants to take you to a greater level of understanding, I'm just going to give you facts. It's not going to get here, and it's not going to go here. And I'm trying to change. I'm learning how to present the information in a manner that will get to your heart. That when you get home, you're going to go like, oh my God, I cannot believe I learned all that. Where do I learn this stuff at? Where do I start? Remember? Fundamentals. Go back to the basics. Footwork. When you know how to walk, when you were a kid, you don't remember, but you used to like, you know, get on all fours, and then you learn how to stand up, and all hell broke loose. But before you could walk, you stood up and you timber, you start crying, and your parents even, oh, you'll be fine. And then when you do like 10 times, you get tired of crying, so you go, oh, he'll get back up, he'll be going. That's what happened with my kid. Man, it was like when he learned to get up, you could not get him from falling. So the first time he got me, oh, come over here, oh, you'll be fine. And then as soon as I let him go, he just starts going over, he get up and fall again. And I'm going like, well, eventually he's going to learn his lesson. Either don't fall and walk. If he keeps falling, he's going to keep hurting. So I had to let him grow. He had to learn. That's the hardest part for us. We do not allow people to walk and let them learn the lessons. How can you learn a lesson if you don't know the blueprint? If you don't know the workbook, if you don't know the book? I mean, how can you know if you don't read the book, if you don't read the manual? Right? I mean, it's only logical. So I'm trying to reevaluate my method of teaching, my methodology. How can I create in you a desire to say, I want to get closer to the Creator? How do I do it? The moment you say, stop. If you go through that threshold, you die. First of all, you got to have a commitment to go through the soreg, which is the outer courtyard of the temple. You can't go in there. People that are serious, they go through the steps of commitment. Okay, now I can be in. Now you can enjoy the whole temple, but only to certain places. The woman can go into this place. The men of Israel can go to this place. The Levites can go to this place. The priest can go to this place, but only the high priest can go over there once a year when the king says you can come in. And you have to respect it. You know what I find interesting? Is that nowhere in the first century writings do you see anyone after Yeshua was raised from the dead. 40 straight days, Yeshua was talking with them. 40. And not once did Yeshua says, by the way, you know the whole temple thing? Done away with. I mean, that would have been a perfect time to establish, hey, resurrected, boom, done. Victory, hallelujah, going back to Eden. Okay, by the way, you know the whole temple? Done away with. I'm here. It was the opposite. He says, wait until Pentecost. 10 more days. You're going to have your complete freedom on Pentecost. The Spirit of God is going to blow on your nostrils again and make you a living soul again. Pentecost became Sinai, and Mount Sinai became Eden again. You follow? It was the opposite. For 40 years that the temple was standing, I could go through the whole New Testament. I could show you time and verse and verse and verse in which James, Peter, John, all those people, they have to go to the temple during the high holidays. 40 years of Passovers, Pentecost, and Sukkot, and they were all there every year because the temple was still standing. No one in 40 days, Yeshua never said, and by the way, you know the whole priesthood thing? New priesthood. Done away with. Don't worry about it no more. I mean, that would have been a perfect opportunity for Yeshua to say, okay, guy, let's go storm the temple. He resurrected from the dead. I mean, that's a miracle. Hello, a miracle in itself. Who's going to tell him anything? Well, Yeshua knew it was illegal. He could not do that. He would have been breaking the same laws that were given on Mount Sinai. So how come he didn't say, okay, Jacob, I want you to get Peter, I want you to get John and all the disciples and everybody else. I resurrected, I'm the Son of God, let's go into the temple and let's kick him out. Did he do that? Nope. Why? We have to ask that question. After he resurrected and then he ascended to heaven, he never once made a decree to say, oh, by the way, you got to learn the name this way. I mean, these are questions that are valid. For 40 straight years, none of the disciples would rebel against any. If anything, Paul says in the letter of Acts says that Paul was hastening so that he can make it to Jerusalem for Pentecost. Oh, wait, I don't understand. I thought Paul said the law's done away with. So why does he need to run to Jerusalem to keep the feast? You know how difficult it was to travel the Mediterranean in the first century? Have you ever studied the maritime travel in the first century in the Mediterranean Sea? You should. It's quite interesting. The book of Acts gives you clues. See, you just read it, but you don't even think about those things. See, you can tell I have way too much time in my hands. So part of the methodology was my brother. He asked me a question. Part of the methodology is when you look at a verse, ask the basic questions. When, how come, where? All those questions, and then who was the audience? What was the problem? What is the context? And then don't go into the Hebrew and the Greek first, because, okay, you're going to get a definition, and how are you going to apply? So if I want to know about California, I got to learn about Californians. Because, California looks in some places just like Arizona and Nevada. Right? So therefore, because you live in that place. Can somebody who's never lived in California have an opinion about Californians and the state of California? No, you can see pictures. Or you can have presumption, or you can perceive, or you can think, or you can assume based on what you see on TV, based on Hollywood. And that's not the real face of a lot of the people in California. Right? Tell me about it. When I came to California for the first time, I came from Puerto Rico. It's an island in the Caribbean. The beaches are pretty nice, with warm water and everything. When I went to El Segundo Beach, oh my Lord, what a disappointment! I went to El Segundo Beach. I'm going like, really? This is it? And then I went to Santa Monica. I go, even worse? Where are the pretty girls? That was me at 13. I'm thinking, I used to see TV all the time. I saw all the pretty girls hanging out all over the place, people going and skateboards everywhere. It was really fun. It was sunny. It was awesome. When I got there, the water was cold, the sand is too hot, there's no palm trees, there's no one around. What happened? Talk about a disappointment, right? And forget San Francisco. Who in the world is going to go in that water out there in the Pacific? You see what I'm saying? But you look at TV and you see the movies, you go, wow, I got to go to California. And then you get here and you go like, I need to get out of California. You see what I'm saying? So how can people have an opinion on the temple and the tabernacle when really we have not been honest to spend time studying what it means, what it's all about, and what is the purpose? You see what I mean? So you see, I came to California with a perception. With a perception based on what I saw with my eyes. When I got here, I got to see the reality. Well, how many of you never really consider the temple study from the perspective that I present it today? It's a little different, right? Because I was able to trace it all the way from Genesis. Now we're going to go a little deeper. All right? So we have Israel, represents a new creation here in Mount Sinai. It's a type of metaphors. Then you have the Mishkan, which is a type of Eden. Why do I call it Eden? Because the presence of God dwelled in the tabernacle. And then you have Sinai, Mount Sinai, which is a mountain, represents freedom, righteousness, honor, and a cosmic mountain. It's a cosmic mountain. That's an idiom for the mountain of God. Okay, by the way, I went to Athena, I went to Greece, and there was a temple of Athena. It was on a hill. You know, all the temples in the ancient world were actually on mountains. You go to Corinth in Greece, and it's Akko Corinth, where they have the temple of Aphrodite. You go to Mesopotamia, you see all those temples. There were either pyramids when they were flat, or if there were mountains, the temple was there. That's why the temple of the Lord is on Mount Zion. You can't change it, you can't move it. You go from the top Temple Mount and you move it to the city of David, you're making some serious problems because this is a blueprint. You cannot change the house of God to any location you see fit. You better do your research. The evidence does not stand. If you're honest with the evidence, you're going to fall short. And the problem is you're not messing with just anything. You are messing with the house of God, His throne on the earth. Can anybody move the tabernacle anytime they wanted to? Or they have direct instructions as to how, who, and where, and the method of transportation, and who got to transport it. I mean, can they move until the cloud moved? If Moses or Aaron decided, oh, I don't like it, it's too hot on this side, can we move a little bit more towards that mountain? Because look, in the afternoon we get the shade. It's not about your convenience, it's what it represents. Somebody would have touched that tabernacle. Oh, my Lord, Korah tried, and he died. So we have to understand these things. So Egypt represented chaos, sin, death, exile, oppression, chaos. Now, the Garden of Eden as the tabernacle and temple. Interesting that we have a water proceeding out of Eden. And we have in the book of Ezekiel talks about water proceeding out of the temple. Let's go to Ezekiel 40 something. Can't remember right now. Ezekiel 40 something. Hopefully, I pray that you're having fun. You're enjoying yourself. I so appreciate Pastor for having me, and, you know, I'm having a good time. Can somebody find where the water is proceeding out of it? I think it's chapter 40, right? There we go. Chapter 47. Yeah. It says, then he brought me back to the door of the temple, and there was water flowing from under the threshold of the temple towards the east, for the front of the temple face east. So you're not going to understand that verse if you don't know the geography of the temple. And it says, from the front of the temple face east, the waters was flowing from under the right side of the temple, south of the altar. Where is that? See, that's prophetic. Okay, so we need to know what that is. So you don't really can see it here. Can you do me a favor? Can you go back to last night's slide real quick? Keep an eye on this slide, what number this one is. Last night was called temple. Do you know how to do that back there? Oh, well, okay. On the left side of it says temple. If not, don't worry about it. But it will proceed. This is north, this is south, east, and west. The altar was here, but it was pointing, the stairs was pointing, not the stairs, the ramp was pointing to the south here. So the laver, as we see the laver, we think the laver was between, it's okay. Now, okay, let me go through them. Right there. We're looking west, we're standing east, this is north, and this is south. This is Beit Aptinas on the left, Beit Hanitzot on the right, northeast. This is Beit Hamoket on the northwest, and this is Beit Osrot in the southwest. Now, it is important because whoever gave the witness that water was proceeding from the temple in the first century was called Eliezer ben Yaakov. Eliezer ben Yaakov was a priest who was there in the first century. He was a contemporary with Yeshua and all the people, and Paul and Josephus and those people, okay? He wrote down what was going on in the temple. And this is the altar. In this room right there, you have the laver. Have you ever wondered why the laver? The water laver? I mean, think about it. If water represented chaos, and water in creation represented disorder, the laver is keeping the water controlled. It represents controlled chaos. That in the temple of God, the water is for salvation, it's not for chaos. See, that's a deeper meaning of the laver than just washing your hands. You see, that's why you have a laver. It goes back to Genesis. It's like, wait a minute, chaos, chaotic waters in Noah, chaotic waters in Genesis, chaotic waters all alone, right? But in the temple, there's calm waters. It's living water, but it's calm, it's control, because it's the God of Israel who controls the chaos of the waters, and through them, now you have salvation. You see, that's a pattern of Genesis. That's what the temple teaches us. So now you see the whole motif all through Scripture. Water can mean destruction for the wicked and salvation for the righteous. Then that's not going to change. That's a concrete theme in the Bible. Okay? And every time you see water, you're going to see two aspects of it. The destructive aspect or the blessing of it. Okay, so now this is what the book of Ezekiel is describing this altar. Now, remember, this is south, right here. South of the altar. Now, let me read this again. Now, remember, we're standing east. You see what this is right here? Normally, you will have that door. See this door? That door will be in front of what you just saw. But to show you the inner part of the courtyard, I got to remove that, okay? So, by the way. So you see this in here is called the Ohel Moed. Out of 65 times, I'm not quite sure. There's about 130 of those instances that the word Moed is used for the tabernacle. Right? Ohel Moed, the tent of meeting. Well, isn't that the same word that he used for the seasons? Modim, and also for creation, that the light for day and for the moon by night. That's interesting that the priesthood, they used to fix the menorah, they fix the lighting in the morning and in the afternoon. It has to be lit all day. It's a type of creation thing. They take care of it in the morning, and they take it in the evening. By the way, you want to know about different levels of spirituality? The tabernacle teaches you. This is how it applies to you today. Okay, you have the outer court, where you have the sun. You have the holy place, which is only the menorah and the light of the menorah. And then you have the holy holies, when it's the presence of God who brings you the light. Now, if you notice, you have each area, there's less people the more you go into the holiness of God. Everyone outside, all the nations, but to go into the court of Israel, you have to be in commitment, and then only the women can go to a certain place, and the men can go to a certain place. Then the more greater dimension you go, the lonelier you are. That's why when you come to the Torah, you are in a wilderness. That's why when you come to the Torah, you got to walk by yourself. Because the Lord is trying to take you to a greater level of holiness, and He can bring just anybody. He wants to bring those that He wants to bring into His sacred space. Once you are equipped, then He uses you as the gardener to go and sow the seed to other people. But in the beginning, everybody wants to bring everyone or their friends and their family members. It's not how it works. Because in the temple, if your family member was not in covenant, you can love them all you want. And you cannot talk to the guy on the door. Yo, man, little man. Come on, Levi, little man. He's all right. He's cool. He's with me. No, that's not how it worked. Either you commit it comes with a cost. Either you commit it or get out of the boat. Stay outside. You can't just come and usurp the authority belonging to the people who's paid a price throughout millennia. You want to be part of this dysfunctional family? You're welcome, but you got to be committed to it. You know what I mean? Okay, so what we see here is that if you follow this pattern that I just showed you, every time you have chaos in your life, it's because you're trying to drag somebody who does not deserve to be in God's sacred spaces. It's the truth. Every Christian goes through this because our desire when we came from the system is to preach the gospel to everybody, and we force it down their throat even when they don't want to. So when you find the Sabbath, you make the decision, your intent is, guys, you need to know this. This is the latest revelation. They're used to all kinds of crazy speculation, but when you go back and the Lord invites you and the congregation to His sacred space, the day when you declare His holiness and enthronement ceremony, they reject it. They're not ready for it. But many of them come 5 years, 10 years later. None of you will be here. None of you would have been here 15 years ago. Only a few. Right? Some of you will be calling me a heretic. Seriously. I guarantee you, 15, 20 years ago, you would have heard this message and me talk about Torah. You would have called me heretic. Oh, I've never heard that before. That must be a lie. Okay, so as we see, this is the east right here, right? Now what? Let's go back to this one. So now Ezekiel 47, remember, this is west, this is south, this is east. Now let's read it. You want me to repeat it again? Want me to repeat it again? Okay. We are looking west. You see this wall right here, the entrance of the temple? You are now looking west. If I look this way, I'm looking south. That's where the altar is going south. It's important that you know the geography. You see, this is very important. The book of Ezekiel is talking about geography of the temple. He doesn't need to specify. He's giving you already the information everybody understood. Because the temple was standing at a time, or Ezekiel knew that the temple would be standing, and he was a priest. So he doesn't have to explain too many things. He says, then he brought me back to the door of the temple. There was water from under the threshold of the temple. Well, Eliezer ben Yaakov can bear witness to that, because he actually wrote down a midot about the water proceeding from the temple. It was 1 amot wide and 1 amot deep. Okay, and by the way, did you know there was a fixed well from underneath this building? There was a fixed well all the way down, about 45 to 50 feet below. They have cistern 28. And in cistern 28, there was a fixed well where they got water for the laver. But there's no water on the Temple Mount. That's why they're moving the city to the city of they're moving the temple to the city of David. Okay, so listen to what it says. That he brought me back to the door of the temple, and there was water flowing from under the threshold of the temple. The threshold of the temple is this door. That's the eastern gate in the tabernacle. You see what I mean? So that means right beyond the eastern gate right here, when you go in 15 steps, right? There is a water coming in. And it says, towards the east, For the front of the temple face east. You see? The front of the temple face east. You get it now, right? Okay. And it says, the water was flowing from under the right side of the temple, south of the altar. Okay. This is south of the altar, east of the temple, right here. So it tells you where the water was flowing from. You see, but how many of you have ever read this chapter and you never really understood this? Because we don't understand the geography. That's not. But if I would have mentioned this to you this morning, you go like, and why is that relevant to me? Because you would have never considered chaotic waters and the role of chaotic waters. You see, and now why the Lord is controlling the chaos in his temple. Everything is perfect peace and order. See, now by understanding all the way from Genesis and understanding the new creation and your mandate and you being in the image of God, so now you know why the priests were in perfect peace and the waters are controlled. There's no chaos. That's the whole picture of the temple. You see what I'm saying? So I'm trying to find a different way to get you engaged. When I have the virtual reality thing, it's going to be amazing. Because then I can have you guys, like 4 or 10 of you, put on the goggle things and then walk through it while I'm teaching you, and everyone can see it on the screen. That's what we want to do, but I need you to pray. I need about $100,000. But if the Lord wants me to get it, he'll provide somebody who'll do it. I'm telling you, I don't need to beg anybody. He'll open it. Can you imagine the difference that will make? Because you take the oldest person here, no need to tell me the age, and you probably never studied the temple. But if I give you an opportunity to walk through it and I teach you through it, then you're going to see it. Can you imagine? We get to, oh, by the way, I could take you to that place right there. Now, only in virtual reality, because in real life, you die. Okay? Now, I'm going to give you see these 12 steps right here? Keep that in mind. So you got to go from one elevation to the next one. You see there's 3 steps right here? Keep that in mind. Now, let me take you to this one now. So you got 15 steps right here. So you got those 15 steps. That's where they used to stand for the Psalms of Degree. Psalms 120 to 134. So the Levites will stand on one step, 120, 121, 122, 123, all the way to 134. Psalms of Ascent. To teach you how to ascend the presence of God. So if you're standing outside the courtyard, let me take you over here. You see out here, you see this fence right here? If I'm taking you, actually, I have a better one. What happened? Oh, you went to the other one? Oh, okay, gotcha. That's funny. I'm looking for another one. Okay, here we go. Right here. You see this fence right in here? That is called the Zoreg. That's the middle wall of division. That's the separation. No Gentile can go beyond that point. Okay, so if you go from the south right over here, you see how there's elevation? From this area here, you got to have a certain amount of steps. Then when you go into the court of the women right in here, you got to go all a certain amount of steps to get into the court of Israel. Only the men can be there. Then if you want to be in the Levites, you have to go a few more steps up. If you want to be the priesthood, you are above that. Then if you want to go into the holy place, you got to go up 12 steps. And then you're in the holy place and then to the Holy Holies. Now, remember what I told you about the ziggurats? Yeah. Ziggurats, which is like the pyramid that you saw early on. Well, if you study the temple, it's all based on elevation. If you take the buildings out and you put the steps, it's like a cosmic mountain. You hide it because of the buildings. But you can see you go from the court, you go from outside. Let me take you all the way back. Okay? There's teaching tools, I'm telling you. You see the temple right here. See, everything's low. You see, you got to go low this way, higher, West Jerusalem. Then you go low, and then you got to go up. Higher elevation. Okay, and you see it when you go underneath the Temple Mount, and I've been down there, and you can see the arches, huge arches. Why? Because they go from elevation. So you all the way, if you're down here by the bottom of this area right here, that's really high up here. This wall is probably like 300 feet up. I mean, those are retaining walls, by the way. Okay, that's not part of the buildings. Anyway, so what we have is, you have arches, because the building was built on arches, and some arches are bigger than others. Why? Because they're going up in elevation. So when you get all the way to the Holy of Holies, it's the highest place of the whole place. So it's like a ziggurat. Except that this is a true mountain of God. You see what I mean? Okay, but I got something really cool to show you about the dimensions. Sorry, I'm going back and forth, but I have to. Okay, you see the steps right in here? There are different cubits in the temple. There are different cubits. Now, the cubit that you will use in this area is greater than the one used in the court of the women. I learned that 2 years ago in Jerusalem. My teacher is teaching me in Jerusalem, and I rented an apartment for us, and it was like 10 o'clock at night, 10:30. I was tired. We spent all day long outside studying, and then we spent all evening in PowerPoint, and he's teaching us, me and another buddy of mine. And I was tired. And he started talking about the steps and the dimensions and the cubits. I got to tell you, I was so tired going like, why is this relevant to me? Honestly, I actually said that. Why do I even care to know about the different dimensions? But because he's my teacher, I'm not going to disrespect him. I kept listening, and I kept listening. I kept listening. I go, wait a minute. Finally got it. And all of a sudden, now let me paint the picture for you. So we are in the living room of this house in Jerusalem. The walls, they have maps. We literally have like blueprints. We have blueprints of the walls. We got blueprints of the gates. We got blueprints of the buildings. We got blueprints of everything. Okay? And I'm really exhausted because I was like, man, I mean, a lot of information. You think I give you a lot of stuff? Hang out with Joe for a day. You know, I'm telling you. And I'm just blown away already by the information I already learned. And this guy's telling me about the cubit, and I could care less because I'm tired. I want to get something to eat, go to sleep. But then he mentions something. He goes, this cubit is a different cubit. Everything built in this area was built with a different cubit of a greater dimension, bigger than the other one. So when we go to this one, right over here, it's a slightly smaller cubit. So I'm going, wait a minute. And it dawned on me, because I understand the 10 degrees of holiness. Kedusha. They tell you that Jerusalem, Israel is holy, but Jerusalem is holier than Israel. Jerusalem is holier, but the Temple Mount is holier than Jerusalem. The Temple Mount is holier, but the court of the women is the court of the Gentiles is holier than the mount than everything else. And then the court of women holier than everything else. The court of Israel holier than anything else, and so on and so forth. The Holy of Holies being the holiest places on earth, right? So once I understood that we are now going into higher level of holiness, the Lord shows us that even in the dimensions of the steps going from the court of the women into a greater level of holiness, the measurements changes. That means that the closer you go to the Lord, the higher level of holiness it requires. Even in the measurement of the cubit changes to teach you about the responsibility of a greater sacred space and holiness. And what's interesting is that when he said that, I stopped. I literally got up. I said, wait a second. Wait a minute. You mean to tell me that even in the measurements of the buildings, God is teaching us what a greater holiness is? And Joe goes, well, yeah, he get all excited, yeah, you got it. And then I said, oh my God. And I went to Ezekiel 43, verse 10 to 12. Let's go there. Now remember, it's just me, Joseph Good, and two other men, but my other buddy, one of my best friends, was there with me. And then I go to Jeremiah, chapters 43, verse 10 to 12. And it says this. It says, Son of man, describe the temple to the house of Israel, that they may be ashamed of their iniquities, and let them measure the pattern, the tavnit, the blueprint. Mind you, in the room that I was sitting in, we have blueprints of exactly everything you're going to read now. Okay? We got the blueprints of... It says, And if they are ashamed of all that they have done, make known to them the design of the temple, its arrangements, its exits, its entrances, its entire design, and all its ordinances, all its forms, all its laws. Write it down in their sight, so that they may keep it, the whole design, and all the ordinances to perform them. And then it says, this is the law of the temple. The whole area surrounding the mountaintop shall be most holy. Behold, this is the law of the temple. And at that moment, I lost it. And I began to weep. And I said, Lord, I don't deserve this. I'm not worthy of it. Truly, I'm ashamed of my iniquities. And what did God do? He took me to Jerusalem with one of the high-level authority in the temple to teach me every desire of my heart. I wanted to learn everything about the house. And he was teaching me the gates. He was teaching me the entry points. He was teaching me the dimensions. He was teaching me about the laws of the temple. He was teaching me about the sacrifices. And he's teaching me about, hey, this is sacred, but this is more sacred. It's like saying, my son, you want to learn about my house? Let me take you. Come. I'm going to bring you a teacher. I'm going to provide for you the means so you can go there. But I'm going to take you to Jerusalem, and I'm going to take you slowly. You see, when you walk in here, you got to be careful, because this means to me a lot more than what people say it means. Man, I'm just start weeping. I start saying, my God, I cannot believe he's choosing us to go to Jerusalem to learn this stuff. And my life changed. I found my purpose. There's nothing more that you can do when you find your purpose in life. You can go through walls to obtain the results because you know your purpose. Do you know your purpose? See, we want to spiritualize everything so much that we lose the essence of what God is trying to show us. Is it difficult? Absolutely. It's just to take time? Yes. You may not have the time. I do. The Father has chosen me to do it. So I'm willing to do all the research for you. I'm willing to put it down for you. I'm even willing to invest money to make you the best picture so you can get it. Even do the videos. I mean, it takes hours of study. Then I have to translate them in Spanish. Then I got to go teach them in Spanish because they don't know even less of what you know. So now we have to start building older men who can teach them to them. If you don't have the time, my wife made me aware of this. I was so hard on people. How come they don't study? How come they don't know this stuff? And she goes, well, that's what God called you for. You're the teacher. Teach them. Well, that's what God called me to do. So why am I complaining? At least they're listening. So if you don't have the time, pray for me. At least pray that Father provides so I can continue to do the work. You don't understand. I get to teach about the house of my King. I get to teach you how to walk in reverence in the house of my King. I get to help you to appreciate exactly the plan of redemption and your function and your role in His kingdom. For crying out loud, who are we that He should be so mindful of us? So all I want to do is educate us, one each other, at the level that you can go. But imagine if you learn just a little bit and you start teaching your child. And now you can start showing him the purpose. Son, you are created in the image of God. And the Lord has given you purpose. Your job is to make the name of God great. Let me teach you how you do it. And you start showing him now. Start a foundation. Remember the footwork? That's how you start with the young kids. You start with a foundation, repetition, understanding, repetition, and then they get it. And then when they leave, they'll come back. They will come back because you establish a foundation. When chaos ensues in their lives because they want to seek out their own way, when chaos comes, they'll remember the source of order if we teach it to them. We need to give them the pathway of the restoration. We don't do that anymore. We want to entitle people instead of empowering people. And the temple is an empowerment program. You want the blessing? You go up to the mountain. I'm not going to send a cart for you to go get it. Make an effort to go. All right, can we go to the other one, please? You see all the nice, cool shots you see right here that you're not going to learn today? And all that. This is like 4 teachings in one. I'm sorry, guys. Are you getting something out of this? What slide was it? There we go, right here. So what we have now is the garden. And the garden, now you have water proceeding out of it. The temple had water proceeding out of it. And then Eden had the water proceeding out of it. Right? Look, you got the water source in the garden. You have one river that has 4 branches. You see how you make the connections now? All right. So now what we have, in the temple, you enter from the east to the west. In the tabernacle, you enter from the east to the west. You see the connections? So now let's talk about this guy right here, Gordon J. Wenham, an outstanding article. And a friend of mine and a student, Lisa Velasquez, she translated it in Spanish. So she translated the article in Spanish. So I'm going to try to post it on my Spanish website so people can read it. All right? So the sanctuary symbolism in the Garden of Eden story. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to quote you his article because it's really, really good. There's no need for me to reinvent the wheel, okay? Nothing that I've learned that I've shared with you today, I've made up or I came up because I'm that smart. It's just all the resources and the research that I've done. I think what the Father is allowing me to have is the connection, making connections. I think that's where my gifting is coming because I learned the foundation, I learned the structure, I learned the basics. So I think now the Father is allowing me to link everything together. That's really what. So I do research from all kinds of different writers, rabbinical, archaeology, topography, historical, and all that stuff. And then I see something, oh, I think that's the gift the Father's given me, making those connections. Okay? But none of this stuff is mine. You know, I'm just learning like you. And by the way, I want you to know, there are times when I'm teaching here today, I've made some connections I've never made before. So I want you to know, because I'm studying this so much, that there are times when either I see the expression on someone's face and I start expounding on something that I just mentioned, and then I start making connections I never saw before. And that's why I like to keep the video so I can go back and watch them and remember what I said. Because then I don't run through it again until I do the teaching again. I don't do one teaching the same ever. You know, I get bored. I can't do that. You know what I mean. It's like you can't do it. All right. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read. Is that okay? Yes. All right. So don't need to reinvent the wheel. It says, these then are the features I have noted within Genesis 2 and 3 that suggest that the Garden of Eden is seen as an archetypal sanctuary. That's the motif. That's the theme. You have to think Eden, temple. Eden, tabernacle. Eden, mountain. You see Mount Sinai? That's where the presence of God was. There was a cloud. The Lord dwelled, the glory of the Lord. In 1 Kings, it came as a cloud, right? In the wilderness, as a cloud, correct? So anytime you see a mountain with a cloud, you know it's the presence of God. That's why the transfiguration is all about an enthronement ceremony and presenting Yeshua as the last Adam. All the elements are there. And I don't know how in the world we have missed it. Because I just caught on to that this year because I'm doing a whole cycle on the book of the Gospels and the book of Acts. So when I'm studying this stuff, I go back and the section that I was supposed to teach last week was Matthew 14 to 17. And when I read Matthew 17, I go, oh my God, there it is. And I read that thing thousands of times and I never thought about it. It's just something connected there, you see? All right. It says, the surrounding material supports this interpretation. Genesis 1, verse 1 to 2, verse 3, tells of the creation of the world in 6 days. Interesting. That's a pattern. You have the priesthood was sanctified for 6 days. On the 7th day, they became priests. It happened at the door of the tabernacle. Right? So then you have the feast happens every 7 months. You count from Passover to Tishri, from Tishri to Passover. Then you have 7 days on unleavened bread. Then you have 7 weeks to Pentecost. Then you have 7 days, on the 7th month, then you're going to have, Sukkot, 7 days, on the last great days. Is this making sense? Everything's patterns of 7. Even your menstrual cycle is based on 7s. You know, the labor was based on the measurement of the labor was patterns of 7. 40 seah. You know, gestation period of a baby is 40 weeks. Everything's just patterns of 7. Okay, that's an amazing perfection, right? Because it means ruleship, enthronement, all that. Cycling, renewal. You know, that's why the woman has to wait until after 7 days. Everything's renewed in her womb. That's why you have the 6 days, and the 7th is the day of rest. You have 6,000 years, and the 7,000 year is also the millennium, the year of rest. That is basically the enthronement ceremony on the earth of Messiah. So all patterns of 7s. It's never ending. It won't stop. You're going to see them everywhere now. Even in the measurements of the temple, you find them. Okay? It says the parallels in phraseology between the conclusion of the creation account in Genesis 1:1 to 3 and the tabernacle building accounts in chapters 25 to 40 have long been noted. Okay? Let me move on. It says this guy is really good. Moshe Wainfeld. If you can get any resource from him, get it. Moshe Wainfeld. He has a book called Righteousness and Justice in the Ancient Near East and Israel. It has to be part of your library. I spent 11 hours on the introduction alone. And I covered on my website, I covered up to 10 chapters. I literally studied the book and then connected with everything in the Bible. Righteousness and Justice in the Ancient Near East and Israel by Moshe Wainfeld. If you go to my website, go to the yeshiva for monthly members, go to the yeshiva section, and there's one of the courses there. It will blow you away. It would actually explain to you why Yeshua died on the tree. Represents permanent freedom. He's the light of the world. Anyway, it's another topic. You're going to have to bring me back for that one. All right. It says, more recently, Wainfeld argued that God's rest on the first Sabbath corresponds to the resting or dwelling in the tabernacle. Further, that the completion of the universe parallels the completion of the tabernacle. That's why I keep telling you, the tabernacle is a cosmos. It's a type of a cosmos. It's a restoration of the presence of God. So Israel is changed from slaves into holy people, right? And they wash their garments. They cleanse themselves. Then they hear the voice of God. And now they're a holy nation, a peculiar people. Very peculiar. They're supposed to be Adam and the earth. Humanity restored. Eden restored. The whole camp is holy. The whole camp represented the cosmos in its perfect state, and the glory of God dwelled within them. Hello. And they rather worship something that was created. You see now the abomination is like, okay, you didn't learn your lesson? You had chaos in Egypt, you want to hear now. And by the way, after they worshiped the golden calf, what happened? Didn't Moses grind it down, the calf, and then he threw it in the brook that was coming down from the mountain, and he made all of Israel drink it, and 3,000 die. And then on the day of Pentecost, hundreds of years later, the Spirit of God again breathed on the people. 3,000 people come restored in the day of Pentecost after Yeshua resurrected. Full restoration. 3,000. Finally got a wow today. Hallelujah. Waited all day long until like 3:30. Thank you. All right. Oh, man, it's cool. On the interpretation of Genesis 1, there is a very smooth transition to chapter 2 and 3. Admittedly, there are changes in the symbols used, but all three chapters look forward to the construction of the tabernacle. So what I would recommend for you is, when you study Genesis 1, 2, and 3, think tabernacle, Eden as a temple. And it'll really change. That means that, when he put the cherubs to protect the way of the tree of life, that's represented by the veils in the temple and the Ark of the Covenant with the cherubs on. So now we know what the Holy Holies represents Eden. So in the temple, right, that place in the temple in Jerusalem, that's what Eden was. That's why if you move that location, you're in trouble. Go ahead and move it to the city of David, see how it goes with you. You mean to tell me you're going to move the presence of God to where you think it fits? This is a blueprint. By the way, who is an architect? Anybody? In architecture, construction? Architecture? Okay, so if I'm the architect, I make the plans for this building. I may not know a lick about construction, but I know how to build it. I know how to design it. I know the rules. I know the rules of construction. I know how to do this, the beams, everything. Then you're my contractor, right? Your job is to read the plans. You cannot change anything. By the way, in that architect has his signature and his stamp. He's responsible that this is legit. If you're the contractor, you're supposed to read them and then you tell everybody how to build it. Okay, so now you're building it. You give instructions. You have foremen. You have the regular workers. And they have to follow the pattern. You cannot get away from the blueprint. If you change the blueprint and there's an accident later on, he has the proof that he did it right. And if he changed the blueprint, he bears the responsibility. Because he changed it. How much more the temple of the Lord? It's a blueprint. It's a tavnit. No one needs to change it. Even the priests cannot change it. The priests have to do exactly, they're the construction workers. They're not there to change anything. They can beautify, they can make it bigger, but they cannot change its function. They cannot change the anything inside of it, and they cannot change the service. Is this making sense? Are you tired? I know you probably wore out. It's a long day. And we've been covering a lot of, cool stuff, right? And I'm going slow right now. Right? I'm going slow. So you got to just put that in your book. That's not going to happen again. I talk fast, but I'm kind of hitting that wall. I'm getting a little tired. But it's good because I get to go slow and we get to it. This is important. It's just, you don't understand. This may be, if you really consider it, life-changing, because today you learn about your function, you learn about your job, and now we're building from that foundation to how to approach God. And that's like, okay? All right, so now, Emmanuel with Adam. The Lord wanted to dwell with him. So it says, the language, to walk to and fro in Genesis 3:8, the same term is used to describe the divine presence in the later tent sanctuaries in Leviticus 26:12, Deuteronomy 23:15, and 2 Samuel 7, verse 6 and 7. The Lord walked in Eden, and he subsequently walked in the tabernacle. It's an idiom. He walked with them to and fro. So in Genesis 3:6, it's trying to use the same tabernacle language. That's one connection. Are you with? Did you get that? Yeah. You got it? You look puzzled. You okay? You got it? Okay. Because you're the only one who say wow, so I got to keep you happy here. All right. All right. The second phrase to attract attention. By the way, this article is for free on Google. Look it up. Okay? You can find it, you can read it, and you can study yourself. All right. Now, the second phrase to attract attention is the mention of cherubim, the cherubims, stationed east of the garden to guard the way to the tree of life. That was supposed to be the job of Adam. Now, this will make you think about Pinchas. Remember Pinchas? Phineas? I mean, think about what he did. Cosby and Zimri, they come in, and Balaam knew exactly how to make Israel fall. He told them. He said, you can't make them. God bless them. You cannot do away with that. But I know how you can do it. Send the Midianite women or the Ishmaelite women or the princess out there. Okay? They went. The people got all, And now what they do, they build what is called a kuba. In the Hebrew, you see it. The word kuba. K-U-B-A. Not Cuba, Kuba. Okay, and what that was, it was a tabernacle. In the JPS Old Testament commentary in the book of Numbers, I think it is, it talks about this, that the word Kuba, it was actually ancient Near Eastern way of pagans worshiping other gods with sexual rituals. So they used to build like a little tabernacle, like a little bitty tabernacle, not in the tabernacle itself, near the tabernacle, but the whole camp is holy. Remember that? So Cosby and Zimri are walking by. Moses and Aaron didn't do the job. You always wondered, how come Moses and Aaron didn't take matters into their own hands? They couldn't have. That was not their job. Pinchas was one of the temple guard, tabernacle guard. Pinchas was actually doing the work of the cherubims protecting the way to the holiness of God. When he had a purpose, he had a role. Moses and Aaron didn't do his job because he was responsible for that. If he didn't do that job and took matters in his hand, then he would have died because he was there to protect the security of the holiness. That's why in the temple you needed 24 priestly Levitical guard. 3 of them were priests, 21 of them were Levites. They were all around the temple. Why? To protect the way to the tree of life. It was considered a sin if you allow something unclean come through the area, and the Levite will die if he didn't do what he was supposed to. So now Pinchas standing east of the threshold of the temple. In Chronicles it tells you that his lineage was in charge of the tabernacle guard. So now when Cosby and Zimri go by, he sees that's an abomination, that's profaning the camp. He defended the integrity of God, the honor of the Lord, and the holiness of the camp, and he killed them. That's why the Lord was pleased. Because the Lord says you protected, you did what I called you to do. You acted according to your mandate. You acted according to your function. You did, and you did it because you love me more than anything else. It's not endorsing murder here. It's the end result of them profaning the camp. But if Pinchas didn't do that, then he would have been guilty. Because remember what I read you earlier? The priests bear the guilt of the sanctuary and the whole camp. You call yourself a priest, that means that you bear the guilt of all of Israel. You change the feast, and you change the temple. You change the function of the temple and the blueprint, then you are responsible. Are you willing to go for that? People they do all kinds of crazy stuff. They don't really know about these things, the legality of it. We need to learn the legality. Okay, so now that we got that, by the way, the whole thing about Pinchas, I never really saw that way until I read this article. When I read the article, makes sense now. Because I studied the Tabernacle, and I knew he was part of the temple guard. So I go, okay, now I get it. That was his function. No wonder Moses and Aaron didn't do anything. They couldn't have. That was not their job. They would have been encroaching on his job. And there's such a thing as encroachment in the temple. The Levites will sing. They were part of the choir. A priest maybe had a better voice than the Levite, but the priest cannot just say, yo, man, can I sing with y'all today? Yo, man, can I sing? I think I can sing better than you. So get out, I'm going to take your place. No, that's not how it worked. You know, if you had a good voice, sing the Aaronic blessing. That's it. But you can't go and do the job of the Levites. And the Levites can say, yo, man, you're not killing the animal the right way. Come on, I'll do it for you. No, you can't do that. Oh, I don't like the way. The Levites didn't like the priest, the way they were manipulating the blood. Or he didn't like the way he tossed the blood on the base of the altar. The Levite would not just say, yo, man, give me that. You don't know what you're doing. Even if he knew how to do it better, it didn't matter. That was not his job. That was not his function. Well, do it in your job. Well, what do you do for a living? You're retired. Who's still working? Raise your hand. Okay, what do you do for a living? There you go. For who? What kind of, any kind of firm, or what is it? Okay, so do you have nurses and doctors there, or just? Okay. When the nurses try to do the job of the doctors, how do the doctors handle that? Do they last very long when you have a nurse who thinks she knows more than the doctors? Right? Right, there's friction, there's chaos. By the way, California is known for this. You got all the driving going around. Man, in the interstate, chaos only ensues when somebody encroaches on your lane. Simple. It's quite simple. If everyone goes at the speed limit they're supposed to, maybe a little bit more, but if you go too slow, if you go too fast, you can create chaos. And then you have what is called, that I have a tough time using, it's called a light signal. The light signal, yeah. The light signal, there's nothing that really bothers me the most, and I'm driving and this guy going, yeah. But then I find myself doing the same thing. So it's like, but if you put the light signal, what you're doing, you're being courteous, and you are asking permission so that you can encroach in someone else's lane. His job is to either grant it or not granted. If he doesn't grant it, then you have road rage. You never thought about that like that, right? So if you go against the traffic, guaranteed eventually it's going to be a crash, so that's chaos. But if you're going towards the same direction and there are exits on the left, there are exits on the right. And then you go at the speed limit, and then the GPS even tells you if there are cars on the shoulder so that you don't get into an accident. They even tell you, Waze even tells you, well, there's going to be a cop so that way you can slow down. You know what I mean? I mean, come on. It's so simple when you follow the rules, right? But if you decide to one day, I want to have fun, it's kind of boring to drive in California. Let me just go against the traffic. I'm going to go south when I'm supposed to go, north. Is that going to work well for you? No. So that means if you stay in your lane, you're going to be okay. The temple is the same way. Everybody had a function, everybody had a job, everybody had a mandate, and they all flow perfectly until someone encroaches on somebody else. Look it up in the Bible. Every time there's chaos in the temple, somebody's encroaching on somebody. Uzzah. Poor guy. He was a priest. But the guy who was supposed to be in charge of moving the Ark of the Covenant didn't do a good job. So now he tried to help the Lord by putting the hand on the Ark of the Covenant. He died. But what did he do? He just did his best. He was encroaching. It's just, to us, we don't get it. That's sacred space. The Lord made strict rules as to whom and what and how somebody can do it. And even though his intentions were good, but that's not his job. And because the Lord gave his word, he cannot break it. I'm not saying, that's not judgment for him not to be in the kingdom. You know, when he's in the kingdom, people are going to ask him, you think he's going to do that again in the kingdom? You're going to see the ark and say, I ain't touching that. I learned my lesson already. You know, you want to touch it? Go ahead. Imagine when he hears that people are saying that the temple was moved to the city of David and all that stuff, and he's going to go like, they doing what? Really? They didn't learn the lesson from me. All right, so where was I? Okay, he did not, however, observe that the tabernacle, Jerusalem, and the temple were also into the east. We have, but he didn't. But again, this guy was a genius, a rabbi from Italy, Casuto. It's one of the few rabbis who actually study the Bible from the ancient Near Eastern perspective. It's incredible. He never really dawned on him that the entrance to the garden and the entrance to the tabernacle and the temple was on the same way. And we get it. Isn't that crazy? It was in the time. It was in the time. All right, here we go. It says, the entrance of the garden was guarded by cherubims. It's another indication that it is viewed as a sanctuary. For cherubim, Akkadian kuibu, were the traditional guardians of holy places in the ancient Near East. In Solomon's temple, 2 cherubims guarded the inner sanctuary in 1 Kings. They were huge, 10 cubits high, and their wings was 10 cubits. Okay? It says, 2 others on top of the ark formed the throne of God in the inner sanctuary. And pictures of cherubim decorated the curtains of the tabernacle walls and of the temple. That is so true. Go read those verses. They decorated everything. I mean, it's really cool stuff when you go back and you read this. All right. The third feature that suggests the garden should be viewed as an archetypal sanctuary is the tree of life, whose fruit gives eternal life. The idea that fullness of life is to be found in the sanctuary is, of course, a basic principle of the sacrificial law and a recurrent theme in the Psalms. Trees were sometimes planted by the patriarchs at places where they worship as covenant, right? And it were a regular feature of Canaanite and later shrines. More interesting still is the observation of Carol Myers that the tabernacle's menorah was stylized as a tree of life. So now we know that the menorah represents the almond tree. So what is the tree of life? An almond tree. You see, it's not that difficult when we understand these principles. How do we know? Well, the staff of Moses is an almond tree, right? And then you got a burning bush in the wilderness. You know, do you know that where Moses was in that burning bush became sacred ground? And that's why he says, remove your sandals, for where you're standing is holy ground. Sacred space. Okay, that's why there was no Israelite who would wear shoes in the temple. You know why? Sacred ground, but in the ancient Near East, wearing shoes over a piece of real estate represented ownership. So that's why the Lord told Israel, anywhere where your sandals or your feet touches is yours. That's why he told Abraham, go and measure the land to and fro, to the north, to the east, to the south, to the west, when you walk it. It's like when you buy a piece of land, you got a survey of the land, and they put fences around, and they put like little, sticks on the ground, the stake. Okay, that's the equivalent as if I go around and start walking around it in the ancient world. But in the temple, you cannot do that because you don't own it. It's sacred space. It belongs to God. That's why you never wear shoes, because it shows ownership, and you have none in the temple. You are just a guest. Okay? All right, let's move on. Fourthly, the description of Adam's job in Eden also suggests it is a sanctuary. He was told to tilt and keep it. Le'avodah u'lesamra. They said the Midrash drew attention to passages where these terms were used separately. It did not note, though, that only other passages in the Pentateuch, of the 5 books of Moses, where these verbs are used together, are to be found in Numbers 3, 7, 8, 8:26, 18:5 and 6. Of the Levites' duties of guarding and ministering in the sanctuary. If Eden is seen then as an ideal sanctuary, then perhaps Adam should be described as the archetypal Levite. Or the Levites represent Adam. People say that Adam was the high priest. Yes. He relinquished that when he sinned. But we don't know in which order, because it didn't exist any. The king of righteousness? I don't know. When we see him in the kingdom, we'll ask him. Yo, Adam, come here, man. I'm doing this. I am doing this. You don't understand. I want to know the mistress of the... Can you imagine asking Messiah, my master, my king, if I found favor in your eyes, will you please answer a few questions? Can we ask you a question? He goes, yes, my servant. And then says, well, what happened in the garden? Adam, Eve, come here. Boy, come here. Okay. My servant Rico wants to know how you knuckleheads messed everything up. And then we go and talk to Adam and Eve. And then Adam's going to say, that woman made me do it. And then she goes, the serpent made me do it. The whole story over again. But it's kind of interesting to know that we're going to go. So you see, the temple, the job of Israel should have been that. But because of idolatry, they relinquished that. The honor to become the image of God on the earth. You see, and God is trying to restore that. So he chose the priests and the Levites as the archetype of Adam. So you see them dressed in white? Should have been us. Right. Exactly. You see, that's why the temple is going to be restored and the sons of Zadok will be there. But after the millennium reign, it doesn't mention a temple. It doesn't mention anything. You know why? Because everything's going to be restored again and we're going to take our rightful place again. So I would agree that we will be priests on the earth again, but until after the millennium. And because I'm trying to get into the millennium, and I don't know when that's going to happen, I'd rather just wait until the Lord tells me my function and my purpose. Right now, let me just serve. Let me not encroach. You follow what I'm saying? I mean, people want to go to the 8th day, and I don't even know how to get into the 7th day. I had this lady told me, well, have you studied about the 8th day? I said, well, I don't even know how to get into the 7th. I'm trying to learn about the Sabbath. You want to talk about after the millennial reign? Can we get through the first 1,000 years first? Anyway, so okay, special mention is made. Now, this is really cool. A special mention is made of the gold, the good gold, the Havilah, in 2 and 2:12. If Eden is seen as a super sanctuary, this reference to gold can hardly be accidental, for the most sacred items of tabernacle furniture were made of covered with pure gold. Even the holy place and the Holy Holies, it was all in gold. Even the floor was hammered up in the time of Solomon, the gold. And it's interesting, that connection I never made until I read this article. How it's saying the gold and the stones. It's interesting, the high priest has all the stones. So here we have the same patterns. You see what I'm saying? Are you getting something out of this? Yeah. All right, good deal. Man, you guys don't get tired. That's cool. It says, right here, furthermore, thank you. Furthermore, the precious stones, Bedolah and the Soham, are also suggest association with later Israelite sanctuaries. The only other biblical reference to Bedolah is Numbers 11:7, where the manna is compared to it. Exodus 16:4 describes the manna as bread from heaven. And some of it was stored in and beside the ark. Even more important, in the sanctuary were Sohan stones, whatever their identity may be. They were widely used in decorating the tabernacle and temple and the high priestly vestments, the garments. In particular, the 2 stones in the shoulders, right, engraved the names of the 12 tribes and the inset on the high priest's ephod, then presented to God when he carried out the duties. It's pretty cool. So you see, the high priest represents Adam, and he's representing all of Israel and all of humanity. So when Yeshua died and resurrected, the Lord forgave all the debt, not only of Israel, but also all of humanity. And then what does he do? Check this out. The Lord says in Genesis, I put the tree of life here and the olive tree here. You choose. Exodus 30. Yeah, you choose. Exodus 30. Yeah, really? Exodus 30, that's why you looked at them. Okay, Exodus 30 says, I put before you life and blessing, death and a curse. You choose. Right? The same pattern. So the Lord forgive the debt of all humanity. All they had to do is take the oath, and all of humanity would have been restored. But they chose to still eat of the other tree. So they go away, get into dispersion. They go away into the exile. Who you study temple? You know a lot of temple stuff. Man, thank you. You don't see that many leaders teaching on this stuff. Do you know how awesome it is to go somewhere and people actually have an idea what I'm talking about? It feels so cool. Oh, man, because now I know that you guys have studied some of this stuff. So I'm going, yes, I could go like 20,000 miles a second. All right, so we got this down. Okay, the next one. The brief account of geography of the garden in chapters 2, verse 10 to 14 also makes many links with later sanctuary designs. A river flows out of the garden to water the garden. Water is, of course, a powerful symbol of life throughout Scripture. So it is not surprising to have it mentioned in connection with the divine sanctuaries. More specifically, Psalms 46:5 speaks of a river whose stream made glad the city of God. Ezekiel 47, I read it to you earlier, described the great river flowing out of the New Jerusalem temple to sweeten the Dead Sea. So, of course, one of the rivers of Eden is called Gihon, the name of Jerusalem's spring, but it's doubtful whether the two are identical. The topography has changed a lot. But it's really interesting, right? But I find it peculiar that underneath the temple mount, there is a fixed well that provided water for the temple. That's not including all the cisterns that were in the temple mount, on the temple mount. Okay, I could talk to you about that later. The quasi-priestly role of Adam is perhaps suggested by another remark in the narrative. The Lord God made tunics. This is really cool. The Lord God made tunics of skin for them to clothe them. Genesis 3:21. Several times the account of the ordination of the priest mentions Moses clothing them in the tunics, ketonet. So the same word used for clothing Adam and Eve is the same word used for Moses dressing the priests in the inauguration. So that's how we make all these connections. Because Moses in this story represents the Father as a type. You follow? Yes? Okay. It says, vocabulary associated with worship in the sanctuary has been used in Genesis. Certainly the law is very insistent that priests approaching the altar must have their private parts decently covered. Unlike Sumerian priests who officiated naked. Now you know why the Lord says to not uncover your nakedness. Because they used to do a lot of orgies and sexual stuff. You see? How many of you did not know that the Sumerian priests were naked? See, now you know why they needed to be dressed. Because nakedness was a sign of shame in the ancient world. Okay? All right. Even lay Israelites are urged to exercise discretion in relieving themselves, for the God walks among you in the midst of your camp. All right. This is from my friend Dina Dye. She is in her book. And I highly recommend you get this book. Man, this book is pretty good. The Temple Revealed in the Garden. I think it's Torah Foundations. Dina Dye. Good friend of mine. Have you heard of her? Yes. Good friend of mine. And we've been studying all this stuff together. We study ancient Near East. We have a team of people that we study together. And she put all of the stuff in that book. And that first chapter that she wrote, she mentioned one little thing on my course in January, and my mind went crazy because I've been studying all this stuff, but she just mentions one thing, and I get it. Start making all the connections. Then I read her book, her first 3 chapters. When I got to chapter 4, I was all excited. And then I called her up. Yo, man, awesome book. Thank you. She goes, man. I said, by the way, you're quoting a guy there. She goes, oh, yeah, his name is this and this and this. So I ordered this guy's books, and he just going to a different level altogether. Oh, my Lord. Now I don't know what to do. So I'm reading those 3 books at the same time. 4, at the same time, but it's all good. So the work of creation was described as very good. Do you know that in Genesis chapters 2, the Sabbath is the only day that he didn't say it is good? You notice that? You talked about that. Because it's never ending. It's supposed to be eternal. Get it? Okay. All right. So the language in Genesis 2:3, the language shift from architecture to agriculture. That is, the sustenance and maintenance of creation. This change in focus required a different kind of work. Now the responsibility of the human, Adam, who was placed in the garden. Adam, mankind, was to serve as a royal priesthood or kingdom of priests. N.T. Wright describes this work as men's vocation. Covenant vocation. So you have a covenant vocation. Your job is to be his representatives of the earth. So what is the function of a king? To be the image of God on the earth, to do righteousness and justice. What is the function of a priest? It's to be a benefactor and a mediator and intercede between you and the Father. That's our function. Doesn't mean that you hold the office of. It means that you have the function of. Two things that are different. Next. Now, let's look into this and we'll be done with this one. Is that okay? I don't know how much longer I could go. I'll do my best to keep going. Is that okay? What time is it? Ah, that's it? Oh, man. All right. I'm here. Whatever. I'll be here until I can't go no more. So let's go to these verses. When you start comparing now, chapters 35 to chapters 40. Now, this comparison comes from this book, Who Shall Ascend the Mountain of the Lord? Joseph Good already mentioned this to me like 4 years ago, but then I kind of heard it. Oh, yeah, you're right, but I just forgot. And then I began to study this, and then he kind of really hounded on it. So this is Exodus 39, but before that, I want to go to Exodus 35. Remember the principle of architecture, and then the presence of God in chapters 2. Architecture in chapters 36, 7, 8, and 9. And then the presence of God comes in chapters 40 of the book of Exodus. So we are comparing the bookends. So you will consider Genesis 1 and Exodus 40 as bookends. They both finish the same way. Start and finish. The garden. The tabernacle represents the garden. In the garden is the presence of God. And in the tabernacle, the presence of God comes down. You see how it's bookends. That's another amen, hallelujah, people. Come on. Jeez. Let's go to Exodus 35. Oh, boy, have mercy. Exodus 35. I hope some of you consider my website. Go learn and teach it with as many people as we can. Can you imagine? You go talk to your friends and you say, hey, have you ever heard about the tabernacle being a type of Eden? And then you tell them, I'm glad you asked. And then you sit them down and you start making the school connections. You don't have to give me credit. I could care less if you said Rico said it. No, as long as you quote from the scripture and you make the name of God great, that's all I care about. Wisdomintorah.com. In Torah. Wisdom in Torah. Yeah, I-N, wisdom in Torah. Okay, so in Exodus 35, you have Moses, who's a type of the Lord in this case. It's a type, okay? It says that Moses gathered all the congregation, the children of Israel together, and said to them, these are the words which the Lord has commanded you to do. Work shall be done on the 6 days, but on the 7th day shall be holy day for you, a Sabbath of rest to the Lord. Whoever does any work, well, you already know, right? Interesting that he goes right to the Sabbath, and then he goes into the construction of the tabernacle. In Genesis, the Lord goes into the construction of earth, and then he goes to the Sabbath. So, you have what Morales says, I think it was Morales, or Dina Dai, one of the two. They said it was Sabbath was last in creation, but it was first in intention. The Sabbath was all about the enthronement of the architect who would become the chief gardener. In the ancient Near East, something I learned with Dina Dai. In the ancient Near East, and I already saw it, but I never made the connections. In the ancient Near East, a lot of the kings, they also were into agriculture. Horticulture, I think you called it. Did I say it right? So in Mesopotamia, you have the hanging gardens. So you have the ziggurat, you have the temple, and then you have the king's palace with his garden. That was prevalent in the ancient Near East. All the kings had gardens. That's no coincidence why the King of the universe had a garden. And that's why Yeshua was buried, resurrected in a garden. And when he resurrected, Chita, he was a gardener. And the world becomes his field. He is now into agriculture. He has sowed the seed of Abraham, the seed of Abraham. Get it? Seed of Abraham. All through the nations. And they have mixed in among the nations. And then in the proper time, their harvest will come out. They water it. And then the Lord chose you from the nations to become a chief gardener. So now every time you go to a Christian brother and you say, hey, by the way, have you heard about the Sabbath and the feast and the name Yeshua and the commandments? You are sowing the word of the Lord. Or you just need to now walk away and let the Spirit of God water it and let the harvest come out in due season. You cannot take the fruit unless it comes out of the ground. You got to let it grow. So that's teaching me to, I present the Torah, I share it with you, and then I make sure that I leave people who can water it for me. Don't squash it with too much water. You can drown the person. Just allow them just a little bit. Give them as much as they can. You can drink this much? Okay, no problem. Actually, give them the bottle. Let them drink it themselves. You know, I consider the kingdom as, you know, like if you go to McDonald's, right? If you go to McDonald's and you eat, like, I used to do this when I was in high school. You know, when you're in high school, you eat all kinds of stuff, you don't gain weight. I look at a McDonald's now. I don't even go there to eat. But I can look at a good burger and I gain 5 pounds, you know. I remember back then they had like a 5-cent deal per cheeseburger. Man, I used to buy like 9 of them. And eat them around 11 o'clock at night. I was like 17, 18, and I was really active. And I'm thinking, I'm fine. It's never going to catch up with me, you know. So imagine you go and buy a Big Mac or whatever with fries, extra large, big fries or whatever, right? But you're eating, and now you're full. You're full of what you think is food. So I have the steak for you. It's prepared by the best chef. It's beautifully done, soft. It's amazing, the best quality meat. But then you go eat McDonald's and you get filled up with what you think is food, fast food, and I try to give you the best steak, you're not going to eat it. You're full. No, I don't want that. So before I used to like, open your mouth, because this food is good, it's better than what you ate. Eat it. I've learned that. No. Oh, you don't want anything? No worries. I just sit over here, put the plate, and you know what I start doing? I start cutting them. Cutting the pieces. Cutting the pieces. And I just wait until you get hungry again. Because I know it's fast food. That's religion. That's denominationalism. That's men's doctrine. So I just let them wait. Eventually, what is the number one complaint of every believer out there? I'm hungry. I'm thirsty. So when you say, oh man, you know, my pastor's not teaching me stuff and I've been praying to God for more and, you know, I need to eat of the word. I still have this, my chef is out of this world. The food is incredibly fresh. You want a piece? Oh, no, I don't like steak. Okay. Eventually you're going to be so hungry you don't care what it is anymore, right? It's kosher steak. Okay. Make sure, all right? And then what I do, finally you're hungry, you're reluctant. You don't want to hear about Torah. So what I do, I already cut it in pieces. So instead of me giving it to you, I said, here's the fork. You eat at your pace. I'll let you grab what you can eat that day. Go back, chew on it. Do you know how hard that is for me as a teacher? I just want to open your mouth and just cram it down your throat. Right? Oh, I'm going like, what is your problem? Better eat it. You just had like 10 burgers for crying out loud. You don't want to eat the good meat? We don't even know how to approach it, how to appreciate it. So now I'm learning to just walk with the steak around like that. And then, can I have some? You sure you can handle it? And then I say, yeah, take a piece. And then when you love it and you say, I want more, I say, well, let me redirect you now to my King who provides it. Instead of me telling you that it was me, I said, no, you don't. I'm only a facilitator. I'm only a benefactor. He gives me to eat, I give you to eat. He gives me grace, I'll give you grace. He gives me righteousness, I give you righteousness. Now let me introduce you. My Father, my King, my shield, and my strength, the rock of my salvation are you forever and ever. I am so grateful. I'm so thankful. I'm delighted to be your servant. My Father, my King, in the name of your Son, Yeshua, who sits at your right hand, will you consider my sister who's asking? She needs righteousness. She needs justice. She needs your grace, oh Lord. You big patron, oh the King are you. My Father, would you restore her like you restore me? Because through Yeshua now we are your kingdom. Would you mind extending your right hand to her of fellowship and righteousness, please? Would you accept her? And he says, well, of course, I want them to return. And then I turn around and says, now that you belong in my Father's kingdom, just follow the commandments and obey him. And he will provide for you as he's done with us. And then when you find somebody else, go let them know. And then you're so grateful because you have nothing to eat. And he's not oppressing you. He doesn't want anything but obedience. And respect my sacred spaces. I'll invite you to a dinner every Friday night. You're going to be the guest at my table. Every so often, I'm going to have a feast. I want you to show up. I want to bless you. I will provide a job. I'll give you the health. I'll give you the means. Just give me your best. Don't show up empty-handed. Just give me your best, and let's help the needy, the homeless, the widows, the strangers with it, so that when the house is in order and the widows are taken care of and the needy and the strangers, they understand that there's equity in the house of God, then everybody's going to be grateful, and then we're going to go get those nations out there that don't know about the character of the God of Israel. That's what the temple teaches you. That's what the tabernacle teaches you. His righteousness and his justice and his holiness. That's why I'm so passionate about the King that I've never seen in my life. I've never seen him, and I believe in him in such a way that I go anywhere. Whatever he sends me. Even if I don't like the place, I have to go because he is my king and I'm the servant. So now let's make comparisons. Exodus 39 and 40 versus chapters 1 and 2 of the book of Genesis, okay? We have, in Exodus 39:43 says, read it with me, would you? And Moses saw all the work, and behold, they had done it. In Genesis 1:31 says, and God saw all that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And then it says, Exodus 39:32, thus was completed all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting. In Genesis 2:1, the heavens and the earth were completed, and all their array. Then Moses had finished the work in chapters 40, verse 33. Genesis 2:2, read with me. God finished the work which he had been doing. In Exodus 39:43 says, Moses blessed them. In Genesis chapters 2-3 says, and God blessed. And lastly, in Genesis chapters 2, verse 3 says, and he sanctified the Sabbath, right? And then Moses sanctified all of the furnishings of the tabernacle with oil. He sanctified it. And then the presence of God dwelled in the garden with Adam, and the presence of God dwelled with Israel in the tabernacle. Amen? So as you can see, there's a lot of parallels that we can learn from this. So creation and the fall, atonement is giving us access again to the presence of God. We have been shamed by sin. Thus, now we don't have access to him. Yeshua has become the door. Yeshua has become the access point. Yeshua has become the image of Adam, that believing in the Father and taking the oath of loyalty to our Master Yeshua, who becomes the facilitator and the benefactor, it takes us to the Father, and the Father now makes us into his kingdom, restores our function, gives us purpose, and renews our mind and our bodies, restores your house, creates order out of chaos. That's how much he loves us. The temples, that's what he teaches you. The temple teaches you God's sacred space, God's order from chaos. And you can trace it all the way from Genesis. If you go to the book of Exodus, it starts with chaos. It finishes with the presence of God in chapters 4. And the book of Exodus starts with chaos, and it finishes with the presence of the Lord dwelling in the midst of the garden, in the midst of Israel. The book of Revelation begins with chaos, and it ends with the temple, and it ends with the Lord dwelling amongst his people. The book of Leviticus begins with what? The how to approach God. He even gives you the blueprint as to how to come before him. He tells you, if you bring a sacrifice, I want you to do it this way. Follow the blueprint. You know why that was important? In the ancient Near East, they believed the gods were capricious. Caprichosos. In other words, they never understood the will of the gods. So the people will bring the sacrifices to appease the gods, to make them feel like, don't kill me, please. Don't kill me, please. Here's a sacrifice. There, and says, please have mercy on me. They never knew the character of their gods. So the Lord says, no, I'm going to give my people commandments. I'm going to tell them exactly what I need them to do. I want them exactly to know when do they break the command and how to restore the relationship. Okay, they messed up. I understand. Nature. I understand their fallen state. Not a problem. I still want to dwell among them. So what you're going to do, you're going to take the best animal you have, and you're going to follow the protocol and the procedure. When you invent the wheel, when you do your own thing, you die. You are rejecting God's fellowship. You're rejecting His blueprint of how to restore relationship. The sacrificial system is teaching you, the offerings is teaching you how the Lord still requires for you to come and fix the matter. Come, let us reason together. You messed up. I understand. You messed up. Repent. Bring an offering. Fix it. I'll give you an opportunity to fix it. I want to fellowship with you. I want to dwell among you. Think about that for a minute. The Creator, no matter our attitudes, He still says, oh, and Israel, please don't turn your back to me. Return. And I will give you this, and I will do this, and I will do that, and I will do that. All through the prophets, there's the Creator saying, return to me, O backslidden Israel. Return to me, return to me, return to me, return to me. They don't want to return. So finally the Son says, I'll go. I will restore it. I will make your name known again. And the Son comes over, and He becomes that image of God on the earth, because the kings are not doing it, and truly the priests are no longer doing it. They're corrupted. So now who's going to stand up for the character and the honor of the great king? His Son did. He says, I'll do it. I'm going to reveal to them your character. How you take care of Israel in the time of need. You're not going to throw them aside. By the way, the purpose of the gospel was not only to reach Israel, but also the nations, because He's trying to restore all things. And Yeshua says, okay, Father, my time has come. I've done what you asked me. Now, will you please restore my honor that I had with you before the world was? And by the way, I let them know about your name. I did what you asked me. I lifted your name up into my death. It didn't matter. You vindicated me. Thank you for vindicating me. But now I did what I was supposed to. Your name will be renowned again, like Moses. That's what Moses will do on Mount Sinai. When Israel should have died, Moses stood up and he says, no. Please, blot me out. Let's go read that. And we'll be done with that. Is that okay? And then I'll open for questions on the topic. Is that okay? But only on the topic. We covered a lot of stuff. So don't be asking me some crazy question about stuff that have nothing to do with the topic today. Is that okay? All right. No CT questions today. Tomorrow. Yes? Go ahead. Thank you. There it is. There it is. See, there's water coming out. This is all the patterns. By the way, now that you understand these principles, you're going to see it everywhere. When you buy a car, you go to the lot, and you think, surely this ugly pink car nobody has is the best car in the world. And the moment you pull out of the parking lot, everybody has it. It happens with suitcases. I try to buy a suitcase that is distinct from anybody else. And when I go there, I see 3 or 4 just like mine. I'm going, what happened? I thought I was unique. I thought I was... This is what happens when you travel so much. Okay, guys, let's go right here to the book of Exodus. Let's talk about when the Lord, when Moses intercedes on behalf of Israel. Here we go. So let's read from verse 7 of chapter 32, okay? They willfully disobey and break the covenant, which is death. Okay, and verse 7 says, and the Lord said to Moses, go, get down for your people whom you brought out of the land of Egypt have corrupted themselves. They have turned aside quickly out of the way, which I have commanded them. They have made themselves a molten calf and worship it and sacrifice to it, and says, this is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt. And the Lord said to Moses, I have seen this people, and indeed is a stiff-necked people. Now therefore let me alone, that my wrath may burn hot against them, and I may consume them, and I will make you a great nation. Very compelling. Moses was an amazing man. I want to thank the Father for Moses. Because if Moses has his own agenda, if he had his own plan, if he wanted to do the whole thing, that would be the perfect time. He says, do it. Do it. Just do it. Just do it. Please, let's start from scratch. I mean, think about it. Just do it. Same thing as Noah, right? Okay, thank you. So now let's read verse 11. By the way, the verses that I'm reading you right now really made a lot of things for me. It says, then Moses pleaded with the Lord his Elohim and said, Master, Adonai, Master, why does your wrath burn hot against your people, whom you have brought out of the land of Egypt with great power and with mighty hand? Notice why he's using the language. You have done that. So I want you to notice the language. Verse 12. Why should the Egyptians speak and say, he brought them out to harm them, to kill them in the mountains, and to consume them from the face of the earth? Turn your fierce wrath and relent this harm to your people. Then listen to what he says. Remember Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, your servants, to whom you swore by yourself and said to them, I will multiply your descendants as the stars of heaven, and all of the land which I have spoken I have give to your descendants, and they shall inherit forever. So the Lord relented from the harm which he said he would do to his people. That still didn't keep the Lord from disciplining Israel. But it was Moses who said, in other words, paraphrasing, he goes, you brought them out. You swore to our forefathers. Your word is at stake. If you let this people die, then guess what? Your name is going to be shamed. That you bring them out, that you don't keep your word to send them back to the promised land. They give you justifiable reason for you to kill them. Moses knew they were guilty because they willfully, rebelliously turned. And the shame of those 3,000 affected the whole community. That's why he made everyone drink of the bitter waters. Right? So therefore now, I'm looking for that verse when he said, blot me out. And Moses turned and went down to the mountain, and the 2 tablets and the testimony, and the tablets were written on both sides. And you know the whole story. But remember what it says, blot me out? Where does it say that? We got to find it.
Verse 32.
Thank you. And verse 30 says, and it came to pass on the next day that Moses said to the people, you have sinned a great sin. Now I will go up to the Lord. Perhaps I can make atonement for your sin. Then Moses returned to the Lord and said, all these people have sinned a great sin and have made themselves a god of a gold. Yet now, if you will forgive their sin, but if not, I pray, blot me out of your book. Wow. Which you have written. And the Lord said to Moses, whoever has sinned against me, I will blot him out of my book. Look at the character of Moses. All he cared about was to protect the honor of God. Wasn't he a priest? Yes. It was not about him at all. I learned from that. And all my drive coming over from Vegas, I was saying, Lord, teach me to make your name renowned again. Teach me to raise your name on high. Teach me so I could just let everybody know how good, how awesome, how righteous, how faithful, how loyal, how amazing you are. And the more I study on the temple, I keep going in levels. I understand the level of holiness a little bit more. Don't be impressed with what you think I know. Give me 1 second. I'll take your question. Don't be impressed. It's just years and hours of study. Comes with a cost. The Father has just given me the opportunity to share with you. And I'm grateful that you spent here all day long giving me the honor and the opportunity to hear it. And I pray that today's teaching was a different take on the temple that I wanted to share with you how to motivate you in a really tangible way to say, I need to learn more about the holiness of God because I got purpose. So I want to thank you for having me, and I pray that you will think about this. And I also pray to the Father that he will not let you sleep, that you will pursue him, that you will pursue him with your life, that you will pursue him. There's a prayer that says, Ma hafti to'atecha. It says, Petach libi b'to'atecha, ve'acharei mitzvotecha tildof nafshi. Open my heart to your Torah, and my soul will run towards your commandments. If we can just follow that blueprint and follow our understanding of the Bible and see all this stuff, your life will become orderly because you're searching his order, not ours. Ours always leads to chaos. So now we got purpose. What are you going to do with it? That's the question. Amen? She has a question.
When he went to the burning bush, he didn't even want to go to Pharaoh because he felt he wasn't worthy. He felt that, well, he was slow of speech. He gave God all kinds of excuses.
Right.
So,
isn't that what we do with the same thing?
yeah, but he was humble from the beginning,
yes,
all the way to the end.
I want to add something to what you just said. That's a very good point. You know what's amazing about, the whole Moses story? And you can find this blueprint all through Scripture, okay? You got to follow the theme. In everywhere, there was going to be chaos because Israel, the family, dysfunctional, will go into shame or whatever. The Lord always had a plan. In the story of Joseph, there was family squabble, and he used that thing because he knew the famine will come. Judgment will come, right? And then he sent Joseph to prepare him. But Joseph needed to go through slavery, rejection, being outcast, falsely accused. And then when he went to Pharaoh, and he didn't ask for the job. If you really read carefully, he gave honor to his God, for my God has shown you what he's going to do, what you're going to do with you. He always redirected. I believe that if Joseph would have been early on when he was younger, and if he didn't go through any of the struggles, he would have tried to take that opportunity to become the chief guy there. So we need to go through the struggles in our lives in order for us to be not the main center of the attraction when we come to the Torah, to focus on the message. Joseph understood he had a purpose. All alone he did. When the father gave him those garments, he knew he was special, that God had chosen him. But there's no way he would have been able to share all the blessings with her brothers. Do you think that if Joseph would have received the power to become second in command immediately 2 years after he went to Egypt, and then the famine would have come, do you think he would have provided for his brothers? No. He would have been hurting. He would have been rejected. He would have been hateful. He probably would have held back because human emotion. But there's something about going through issues and going through struggles in our lives. It humbles us. I know. Okay? Because I've been through it. And I've been homeless in my life without a place to live for about 2 or 3 weeks. I've been there. I was close to $25 to my name, and that's it. And I remember not having anything. I've lost everything. So now I understand why I needed to go through that. If I'm going to take the message of righteousness to the nations, I needed to learn that he is my sole provider. He's the one who intercedes on my behalf, who provides for me. That's why when you asked me to come, or when I called you, I didn't ask for a fee, did I? No, my job is to come and teach. I'm not here to have a fee. He'll move the heart of the people to take care of me to go to my next thing. I got to do what God called me to do. I'm not here to beg you for anything. I don't need to beg you. We're brothers and sisters in Messiah. We're supposed to have each other's backs. If you like the message, then you do what God called you to do, and that's it. That's going to give me what I need to go to the next thing. I don't need to beg anybody. I don't need to shame you in the process either. But the sad thing is, if you don't do it, somebody else will. And then if somebody who's not in covenant will do it, then that's shameful to us because we have the message and we don't do anything to empower each other. Right? So what you just said is true. In the time of the Babylonian captivity, the father allowed Israel to be taken captive. But what did he do? He placed key people next to the kings. Daniel. At the time of Persia, for crying out loud, he actually set up Esther to be the wife of the king. And then Ezra was there. And then Nehemiah was there. And then you have Zechariah, Ezekiel. All these guys were there. Every time. Do you think it's a coincidence that even though they may not believers in Yeshua, but we have a president for the first time in the history of our presidency, we have a president whose whose daughter is Jewish, whose son-in-law is Jewish, whose grandkids are Jewish, who actually moved the embassy to, this is not by coincidence. It's not about politics, guys. It's about what is happening. At the perfect timing, when we had a president, it was all about Islam, 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 Islam. It's not about color. It's not about this. It's about whether you do the right thing or not. It's not about color. Who cares what you look like? If you do the right thing, you do the right thing. And it bothers me when we're making this about color. God is wise. He allowed Israel to be scattered all through the nations, to mingle among the peoples. So that way you can say that he's the God of the whites, all the blacks, all the yellow, all the blue, all the green. Because we all look different. Go to Jerusalem one day. You walk in Jerusalem and you go like, okay, I get it. Truly, we have sown that seed everywhere. Because we don't all look the same. Thank God. Imagine if we all look the same. Then no one else can be in the kingdom. Go ahead.
The true rainbow is God's rainbow, all
Amen.
different shades of dirt. We're all different shades of dirt because we're all dust of the earth.
I never think about it. That is so true. That is true. That was a good point. I didn't think about it. Now, it's interesting how the gay community, they appropriated themselves with the rainbow. Profaning the holy. The sign of the covenant. Everything's like, non-gender, really? I got to call some weird names now if I don't want to offend you. He, she, I can't say that anymore. Is that how far we've come? Come on. That's ridiculous, right? Next question.
I really appreciate you talking about respecting God's space. And the Lord's really been working on me on this the last couple of weeks, and I hadn't thought of it in terms of what it was like in the beginning of time and how we need to respect that. And Adam and Eve were given the same thing, that they had to respect that space to have that intimate relationship with God. And then they mess up. And that pattern repeats over and over and over again. And we see it with, as you said, Moshe, at the burning bush. We see it again at Sinai. He said, bottom of the mountain, nobody crosses this or they'll die. And so it's like, yes, he's not only orderly, but in that order is respecting his space.
Right.
And if you do that correctly, you're going to have a much more intimate relationship with him.
By the way, I'm glad you're mentioning that, because the whole thresholds that he established, Mount Sinai, it parallels the temple. That's why you have different thresholds of who can go beyond a point. Not to make a distinction between people. It's to show Israel that you go into a higher elevation. You better be willing to take the responsibility to act in a manner that brings honor to that area. Okay, so what if you invite a friend of yours and they go to your house and immediately they walk? I know ladies, I'm going to ask the ladies, okay? Because I know ladies are more, sometimes men don't care in that sense because we don't read things. We're oblivious. Really, sometimes it's like, okay, so they went into a room, and, but if you take a woman who has a girlfriend, right, and then she's not a good friend, just somebody you invite to your house, and then that friend comes in and immediately goes to the bedroom, their marriage bedroom, being uninvited. What are you going to do? Says, what are you doing here? That's disrespectful. Worse, what if she just walks in and sits in your bed? She hasn't done anything. She just invaded their sacred space. She didn't sleep with the husband, but she is disrespecting the sacred space. That's intimate, you see? And that's our bedrooms. We set perimeters and standards, So imagine the temple. And that's the whole idea, to understand the holiness. Not to restrict you. It's to teach you how to respect and reverence. So this has really helped me, because now when I go visit a lot of schools, self-defense schools. So I understand sacred spaces. So when I go in, I'm very respectful to the students. I'm very respectful to the teacher. I'm very respectful, and I pay a lot of attention to what everybody else does. I'm looking around. From the moment I get there, I see what they do. Well, they do this, do that, do that. I'm very mindful of everything because I'm a guest and I want to leave a door open. So my approach to the leader and to the students say a lot. If the students treat me nice, normally the teacher is really cool. You know what I mean? So now they made me feel welcome. I say, I want to come back. And I'm willing to pay whatever because I feel welcome. I pay a cost. And I feel welcome. And all I want to be is feel honored to be there. And then I learn in the process. You see, everything comes in. Everyday life, it will permeate through every aspect of your daily life. No more questions, really? I guess that's a good thing, right? She has a question. Sure. Yeah. The name of the article is Gordon Wenham. There are different opinions about different scholars. And people ask me, well, Rico, how come you study all these guys? They're not necessarily Torah observants. Man, some of the research they do is so overwhelming that you're going like, I cannot believe they don't follow the Torah. They talk about the Torah. They talk about the Sabbath. They talk about the temple. But they're typical nominal Christian people. But the research they do is straight up. It's like an archaeologist. You know, many archaeologists are actually non-believers in God at all. I met one of them. A legend in the Israeli archaeology of the Temple Mount, the southern steps in the city of David. Very humble lady, really nice lady. She even told me, she goes, well, I'm not a believer, you know. I clearly already knew she was not a believer in Yeshua. So she's not really a believer in God the way we are. But she made a really cool statement. She said, but there's something to it because everywhere I keep digging, I find stuff that is in the Bible. Kind of paraphrasing a little bit what she said. And she goes, it kind of impacted me because I'm going like, the Lord uses someone who doesn't believe like us to prove that the Bible is true. And then the people who believe in the God of Israel, who's supposed to defend the validity of the Bible, they're the ones moving everything around, the feast, the temple, the everything. You're going like, wait a minute. So he uses some people to establish what he already has. Anybody else? Yes.
You made reference before about going to a different martial art and having to learn what the new footwork is or the new fundamentals. What would you say in this temple, in the temple study that you're doing, would be the fundamentals of how we should think or how we should walk? Like,
Great
what would be
question.
those? What would be that triangle? What would be that?
Great question.
Those
Thank
fundamentals.
you. Thank you for the question. All right. It's not an easy answer because everyone focuses on different areas. But if you consider, for example, don't start talking about sacrifices if you never really studied it. It'll be a stumbling block. But I will start by understanding the geography of the temple. When you understand, like I showed you today in the book of Ezekiel, geography. That's what Joseph Good taught me. We started talking about geography of Jerusalem. Geography. So when you understand the geography, you know where east, believe it or not, when you understand north, south, east, west, and you start reading the Bible, oh my, it's like, I get it. I know what the prophet is saying. I know what Yeshua, I know where he's at. You know, you literally have your GPS. You know the geography and the topography, especially the topography, because Jerusalem is mountain. You know, the higher places than others. So once you understand the geography and the topography, then you start focusing on the foundation. You start focusing on the feast, and then how they did the feast in the temple. Because when you understand the feast and how they did it in the temple, they are protocols, they are rules, and they are teachings there that points to the Messiah, that points to redemption, that points to sanctification. You follow? Once you understand the feast days, then you can start going into the buildings and the functions of the building. You start learning the separation of the holiness of the city. So you follow a blueprint. Start from the same foundation. Like I have to start with footwork and basic things, you know, on the ground. You know, I have to move my body in a particular way that I didn't have to do before. Same thing is in the temple. Find out, first of all, where it is. Don't move it. Leave it where it is. learn why it's there. It's the throne of the Lord. It's the mountain of God. The Bible in Ezekiel says the mountain, the whole mountaintop. The whole mountaintop. If you go to Jerusalem, you know the city of David is not a mountaintop. It's never been. Okay? So what happens is many people, they want to get into the deep studies of the temple without understanding the function of the temple. That's what I try to do today. Today, instead of giving you all the facts, I went a little deeper into dimensions and the gates a little bit in the afternoon. But this morning, I wanted to entice you in a way to understand your function and your purpose within the body of Messiah to proclaim the holiness of God. Well, guess what? Eden is a tabernacle. The temple is Eden. To understand the presence of God, you got to understand the tabernacle and the temple. You see what I mean? So all I tried to do today was trying to create an environment of connecting the dots. And that's what you should consider starting. It's like you study the tabernacle, now you have that connection with Genesis, and you're going to see the recurring themes all throughout the Bible. You know, the tabernacle was finished, the presence of God came down, they could not even officiate because of it. Well, when Solomon's temple was dedicated, the same thing happened. Then you know in Genesis, the house versus the home. See, creation was not finished until the Lord sanctified the seventh day, and he rested. He ruled from there. He ruled from his creation. Well, guess what? If the Eden is a mountain, and Eden was where the presence of God was, and that's where he rested, he ruled, and he was the king, that means that the temple where the Holy Holies was is the same thing. So that only goes to show you that the temple is actually Eden. See, you come to the same conclusions. So by following a pattern and a blueprint and a foundation. And that comes by understanding the Sabbath and what it represents, not only in observance, but also in symbolisms and themes in the Bible. What does the word rest represent? What was the enthronement ceremonies and how come they took place in 7 days? That's why Hanukkah took place 7-8 days, because they were dedicating the altar, which represents the authority of God in the temple. So when someone refuses to celebrate Hanukkah, they are rejecting the authority of God on the earth again. They don't even know that. They think it's just because of the oil in the menorah. No, it's the dedication of the altar, which represents the authority of God, who only the righteous can approach God, according to Psalms 24. Those clean hands, clean heart. You see what I mean? Because the earth is the Lord and the fullness thereof. It's an altar psalm for the first day of the week. So now you start connecting the Psalms with the temple. You start connecting the gospel with the temple. You start connecting the book of Revelation with the temple. You start connecting the book of Ephesians. He uses a lot of tabernacle language. If you don't understand the tabernacle and the temple, you're not going to understand what Paul's trying to say. Because he uses the one thing that taught them what heaven was, what Eden was, what perfection was, what spaces were, holy spaces and things like that. Or you can go to my website and check out the temple stuff that I have. Next question.
It wasn't a question. I just wanted to tell you that I truly appreciate that you explained why the women were separated.
Oh, thank you.
Because, you see, I've had so many people say, well, you know, why are they separated? Aren't they as good as men? And so I felt that when you explained it and so well, that it actually gave me something to say back.
Praise God,
as praise to the Lord, because he respected us so much that he kept us from being kind of like defiled.
Absolutely. That's
And
exactly it.
I really appreciate your explanation. It was beautiful.
Thank you. I'd like to add a little bit to it, if you don't mind.
Yes.
In Mesopotamia, there was a ritual. It didn't happen everywhere, but in some places in Mesopotamia, a woman, once in her lifetime, would do a ritual sex. So what she would do, she would go to the gate of the city or the gate of the temple. She would sit there. Then any man who will walk by would throw money, then she would go have sex with the guy, regardless of what it looked like. And that was something, sex for the gods, fertility rituals. So afterwards, after she had the sex, then she will bring whatever she got paid, and then she will bring a sacrifice to the fertility goddess. Then she will go back home, and she will go through a rite of passage to restore her back to her former state. All right. This is in the Bible, by the way. Let's go to Genesis 38. Genesis 38. You're going to notice when Tamar, you see? Exactly. She covered her face, sat at the gate of the city. He thought she was a prostitute. And notice that when he wanted to have sex with her, she asked for something. She asked for money. She was using the culture of the day. Isn't it interesting? She was using the culture of the day, and many people can't handle that, by the way. They just don't get it. So if you go in, and the key here is when Judah tells her, verse 15, when Judah saw her, he thought she was a harlot because she had covered her face. So clearly that meant something back then. Right? And it says, then he turned to her by the way and said, please let me come into you, for he did not know that she was his daughter-in-law. So she said, what will you give me? All right? So then you may have sex with me. Notice she was asking for money. Interesting. Okay, so but remember that she's not doing the job of the prostitute here because he made an oath and he didn't follow through. Okay. At the time he was already widowed, by the way. Doesn't justify, because that only goes to show you how far Judah has come away from the family struggle with Joseph. That he goes, marries a Canaanite, then loses his children and sleeps with a woman who he thinks is a prostitute. And he's supposed to be a praiser of God, Jehudah. Talk about falling away from that mandate. So he gets away from his mandate, chaos. He marries a Canaanite, chaos. Okay? And it says, and he said, I will send you a young goat from the flock. And she said, will you give me a pledge until you send it? Then he said, what pledge should I give you? So she said, your signet and your cord, man, and your staff that is in your hand. She took it all. This guy must have been really desperate. No, you see, you don't understand. The fact that he gave away his signet ring, the symbol of authority and power, I mean, she can literally, it's like a power of attorney. She can literally take, it's like a signet, the signet ring was like a cylinder seal. She could have bought anything, and that represented who he was. See, that was a guaranteed collateral. I mean, she could have really taken him really to town, you know, and she didn't do that. Now watch. It says, then he gave her staff too. The authority. Then he gave to her. He went into her, and she conceived by him. So she arose and went away, and laid aside her veil, and put on the garment of her widowhood. And Judah, listen to this, sent the young goat by the hand of the friend, the Adullamite, to receive his pledge from the woman's hand. So he did not find her. Then he asked the man of that place, saying, where's the harlot? You see that? It says, who she was openly in the roadside, and that she said there was no harlot in this place. And he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. Also the man in the place said that there was no harlot in that place. If you look in the Hebrew, it's Kadashah. It's actually, the root word is from Kadosh. She was set aside. Kadashah, I hope I'm pronouncing it right this time around. There were women who were set aside for holy for the fertility goddesses. That's a language of temple prostitution. So, understanding that this is going on in the ancient world, as well as in the first century in the imperial cult, all the Lord wants to do is protect your honor. So if someone will come from Rome, can you imagine the Romans? That's why the gospel grew so high, so much in the Roman Empire among women. Because the level of honor that God would give women in the kingdom was unparalleled to anything in the Roman Empire, especially slave women, because they were not allowed to be mistreated. And let me give you an example. When Israel goes to war against a nation, The only reason why Israel can go to war is when the nation is oppressing Israel. It's the only time. They wait. Even to this day, they do it. You don't see Israel attacking anybody for attacking them's sake. Either the other nation is oppressing the people who cannot defend themselves, or they wait, and they wait, and when the other people keep killing Israelites, and they can't wait anymore, when they are unleashed, they are unleashed. Okay? All right. So now what they will do, Israel's told, if you go too far away and you make war with a nation and you killed everybody, you see a woman, take her in, give her 30 days of mourning, shave her hair off, and shave her hair and off, well, clearly shave off, shave the head and cut the nails, mourning ritual, minimum 30 days. And then you ought to marry her. Give her honor. She's a widow. She lost everything. I mean, if you don't give her honor and you let her go, she can become a prostitute, a slave woman, or she dies. Don't leave her hand. She's not responsible because the man and the king of that city was ruthless, and now we were defending ourselves. So take her, and now you can go into her, but marry her, so that the children that come out of this relationship will have a name, will have honor, and you give her honor. She's not a widow no more. She's got protection. She's not happy that you guys killed her family, but it's better than being a prostitute. It's better than being by themselves. And if she doesn't want to be with you because she can't get over the fact that you killed her husband, then you have to set her free. You're not to sell her. Unparalleled in the ancient Near East. What do the Muslims do now? ISIS. They will go to Mosul and they will kill all the women, or they will rape them, sell them, interchange them with everything, and the women, they'd rather die. They were killing themselves. Why? They were shamed. No hope in the world. They have no longer the purity anymore. Their children have no parents. They don't know who's the dad. Now the kids are bastard children. And now guess what? They'd rather die in honor than live in shame because they have no hope in the world. Now you go in there and preach the gospel and teach the Torah in the right context, and those women will come to the gospel because they'll see the equity of God and the restoration of justice and the restoration of honor to her. Another question? Yes, ma'am. Oh, she has a question than you because she has your mic. I'm sorry.
It was about the same thing we're discussing right here. Have you ever heard of the cubit being? Well, you did say different sizes of the cubit, and I've always thought that was the steps that were smaller because the women had to be out there, and there isn't the length from the elbow to the hand a cubit.
Normally depends which one, but I'm not quite sure.
For the female, it would
be
less than the man.
That's true.
So
I'm not sure.
I thought there was that distinction.
Yeah.
I didn't
I'm
know
not
if you've
even
heard
sure.
of that.
Not sure at all.
And then thank you for the explanation, because I learned somewhere of, how the Holy of Holies in the temple, extremely holy. So women, because of our menstrual cycle, because of the blood, we couldn't be in the next section. Have you ever heard of that?
I used to think it was that.
Yeah.
I used to think it was that, but I no longer teach that.
Right.
Because she's only in the menstrual cycle for 7 days. She can't be there in the temple anyway.
Right.
I mean, you can just say, hey, I'm in my period, and not go to the temple. She can't even go. So
Okay.
that would not withhold her from being able to do it any other time.
Okay.
You see what I mean? It's not like
Right.
she's in her menstrual cycle the whole month, So even
Yeah,
the priests, when they had a
they-
seminal discharge, they were unclean until evening. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just the holiness. It has really nothing to do with that, because those are
Right.
natural occurrences.
Right.
But I used to believe that, by the way. But
So we got
now
it somewhere.
I don't teach that anymore because it's not lining up.
Okay. Thanks for that.
You're welcome.
explanation.
She has a question, my sister in the back. You guys are so behaving so good. I'm so glad to be here. I can tell you do an amazing job, guys. Thank you.
You were talking about the importance of the directions of the temple, the eastern, east, west, north, and south. What you said reminded me of something I heard in church when I was a little girl, that when God comes back in judgment, when he comes back, he's going to split through the eastern sky. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but is that why the directions are so important?
Yeah, because the veil, without rented, is looking east. A Messiah comes from the east, and the dispersion comes from the east. not going to. Going to the east is shame, is chaos, is death. It's like going to Egypt, going to the abyss, going to hell. You follow what I mean? So coming from the east is returning to the presence of God, returning to Eden, returning to sacred space, returning to every. It's really cool. From the east to the west. So now the question is, why do we turn east now? Well, because we're here in the States. When I'm in South Africa, I don't look east, I look north. You know? And so where you're at, you're all pointing towards Jerusalem because that's our hope, that we're going to be regathered from every corner of the earth. I'm going to Australia and New Zealand in July. I'm really excited. I'm going with my family, my wife and my boy, one of my boys. And that's one of the corners of the earth. I've been to Cape Town. I've been to Durban. I've been to South Africa. That's one of the corners of the earth. I went to Alaska. That's one of the corners of the earth. I went to Hong Kong, which one of the, I'm going to New Zealand, Australia. I'm like, wow. I just need to go to, I've been to Argentina. That's another places of the earth. I'm going to Chile this year, which is another, I'm telling you, it's overwhelming to think that the Father's given me an opportunity to teach that everywhere. So, yes, who has a question? Somebody, she has a question, he has a question.
Well, it just occurred to me that all the gifts come from the east. Even the light of the sun comes from the east, and the Son of God comes from the east, and all four of the rivers are in the east, and they converge into one. In
the west, yes.
One new river to the west, but everything comes from the east. All the good gifts come from the east to the west. So it's always from the rising of the sun on. So when the Son of God rises, he's coming from the light of the sun with the sun at his back, and he's always coming from the east to the west.
I just found this so amazing that in the ancient world, everything was so logical and simple. They have a shepherd. Okay, so you look at the shepherd, takes care of the sheep, takes them to green pastures, takes them to drink water. But the true shepherd never tells the sheep how much to drink or how much grass to eat. His job is to protect them, right? So it's interesting that he picked a shepherd to be king of Israel. Because if he cares for animals and is willing to put his life in danger to preserve the animal, how much more Israel? So he used the gift. Because a king is a shepherd. That's why the expression, the good shepherd in the ancient world, represented a good king. Like David. So, but in the ancient Near East, you see that in the ancient Near Eastern text by Pritchard, you see them all in there. And they say, the king such and such, the son of the God, son God this and this, the good king, the good shepherd. Because that was an idiom for king. You know what I mean? So you learn all these things. Patriarchal families, the hierarchy of the kingdom is based on the patriarchs and the hierarchy in the house. A woman and a husband in private, they're the same. In the public arena, the job of the wife is to respect the position of the husband in the public arena to preserve his honor. You can argue all you want in private, but in public is a way to honor him and the hierarchy. When the kids trying to go to the mother, when the father says no, and if the mother says yes, when the father says no, it creates anarchy because there's no order. There's chaos. The kids, the serpent, he didn't go to Adam first. Adam was there, but the serpent went to Eve. Right? So it created anarchy. But Adam was there. He didn't take care of Eve. See, he should have said, what's your problem? That's my wife. Leave her alone. You know what I mean? Well, Moses took care of Israel. He says, no, this is your people. Adam should have stood up. Yeshua did exactly what Adam didn't do. Yeshua was willing to take the penalty of the disobedience on himself, just like Moses did. See, all those patterns will repeat over and over.
Since geography and measurements and structures and shapes are so important as you've talked about today, have you ever considered the idea that the tabernacle is dome-shaped rather than rectangular-shaped? And if so, what do you think of it?
No. People presented that the evidence does not line up. Some people talk about it. I remember when they sent me the blueprints. Beautifully done. Righteously indignant, because that's a blueprint. You can't change the blueprint. And the thing is, look, man, the Jewish people, they preserve this stuff more than anybody. What will be the end game for the Jewish people and the priests? Why would you do a dome in the tabernacle and then do rectangle in the temple? Makes no sense. Because it's a blueprint, it cannot change. You see what I mean? The dimensions got a little bigger, but the function was exactly the same. But none of that ever changed. By the way, in the ancient Near East, there was never any temple that was a dome or rectangle. They were all rectangle. Did you know that? See, so it seems logical, but realistically, it doesn't line up. And I remember seeing the blueprint, and I literally got offended. I ripped it, because to me, that was the blueprint. Changing the blueprint of the tabernacle. You're not sanctioned to do that. You don't change. Only the priest can work on the blueprint. They're not even changing it either. So the laws are very strict when it comes to that. That's why when you talk about the temple and the tabernacle, consider really researching it. And it's interesting how the person who was presenting this theory, did you learn it from some is that what you're looking into? Because I've learned it from a gentleman who was doing that. Nice guy. Very nice guy. I don't have anything. I never met him in person. He always was very nice to me in whatever we dialogue. I can't remember how, email or whatever. But the intentions may be good, but it's just encroachment. You're not supposed to do it, and we don't get it. You mean to tell me that the Jewish people who've been trying to restore the temple for 2,000 years, they're gonna know it was a dome and they've decided to do a rectangle? Then if that's the case, then how come the temple of David, the temple of Solomon, was endorsed by the presence of God if it was a different shape altogether? See, if we understand the word tavnit, which is patterns, the blueprint, like I said earlier, no one can change the blueprint that an architect has, unless the architect makes the changes. And you notice that in the tabernacle, the blueprint was set up by God, and then the Lord revealed to David how he wanted to do the temple, because David wanted to build a home. You see what I mean? So I consider all these theories and I look at them, but I also understand the blueprint cannot be changed by just anybody. That will be considered encroachment. And if I endorse that, then I'm having a problem, because I'm not a priest. See, only the priest can do certain things, and you can't eat, and even then can change the blueprint. You follow? So something to consider. So follow the whole. By the way, in the millennial reign, are you going to have a temple that is actually dome? No. So why would the blueprint change where God does not change? And that's always been my premise when it comes to that. So I don't really get into an argument, because in reality I understand that they're trying to search and they're trying to research and they're trying to, but then again, you got to go to the people who's been knowing about this longer than anybody else. When you go back to Israel and you're asking Israelites to help you with this, and no, constantly, and now we are the experts and we just came yesterday and we don't really know the language, we don't know anything. God works in order, and we are from the nations, we are finding our way. And now we got to be careful what we touch, what we don't touch. Sacred spaces. That's what I mean by sacred spaces. So what I do, instead of me attacking or disregarding, I just research it, look at it, and say, the evidence does not line up. It cannot be established as truth. And then move on. Because I know the intent is not bad. Everybody's trying to find their way. But there are rules of the game. You cannot change the rules just because we think we know something new. So that's my take on that. That's a good question. I have thought about it. I researched it. And based on what I found, it's not enough evidence for me to say it's valid. That's it. Yes, ma'am.
When Moses and the elders went up to have dinner with the Lord, and they saw his throne room, and then also in heaven, the Lord showed Moses the temple and said, "Build my earthly temple exactly like the one that you see here." Are those the same thing? Are they inside the New Jerusalem or outside the New Jerusalem?
It should be. I'm not quite sure I'm not quite sure of the question.
The question is still forming.
Ah, okay. Hey, have you considered that maybe the cloud made the top being like a dome? I mean, that's something that we may be missing. Instead of the structure being round, which it doesn't line up anywhere, maybe the cloud became a dome over. I don't know. You know? So, yes, one more question. I hope you guys don't mind. I gave you guys my best.
It's
You know, and I'm kind of hitting the wall. Go ahead.
I was wondering, it doesn't sound like you have the time, but I was wondering if you've ever felt or God has told you to write a book about your experience and how you got here.
Yeah, I already know the title. The Awakening
Follow
of
the-
a Nation.
Oh, I thought it would be Follow the Cloud.
No, I thought that'll be chapter. That'll be a chapter.
Okay.
No, it's like the Awakening of a Nation. That
Awakening.
chapter, that title, I've had it since '99.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
2000. I asked the Lord, I want to write books, but I'm a terrible writer.
Oh, you don't have to be.
Well, that's what they keep telling me, but I never have enough time to do anything. So
You
I
just
gotta
get a good editor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll probably drive the person crazy. Because as you see when I teach, I go in one line and then zip, I come back to it. It's just start making connections. So I have to be
But the editor-
on my best when I'm writing the book, if I ever write it. Because what I was thinking about doing is having, I have teachings that are thematic. So I was thinking about taking all of the teachings that deals with a topic and make each teaching a chapter. Because I give you so much research.
Right.
You know, that basically, that's what I'm doing for my master's.
Right.
You know, I'm going to start doing some of the stuff, the research that I'm doing. The guy told me that I'm doing doctorate work, but I'm trying to go for my master's because I'm working to make a transition in the future. Hopefully, I'm able to teach at some kind of, you know, religious colleges and stuff like that. And hopefully, you know, settle down a little bit and do that. But keep me in your prayers because I want to get the VR,
Yes.
virtual reality thing. And it will be a huge blessing. I need you guys to, you know.
I apologize I wasn't here last night, so I hope this is not forcing you to repeat yourself. But I think it's, and I wasn't going to ask the question because I can't remember the chapter and verse, but I think it's pretty sure it's Leviticus. And it's talking about priests, and then the word priest comes again. And I had read that it's two different words in Hebrew, but we only see it as priests in the English. And if we're supposed to be informed about the temple, what is it, do you know off the top of your head why the priests are named two different things and how that would be significant to us?
I didn't even know that. I will have to look it up now. Do you know what chapter?
I don't. I was trying to think that
Oh, if you find
through
the
so I
chapter,
could
let me
read
know.
it and then I could go, does this make sense? And I haven't had time to chase it around, but I was kind of thinking in my mind, was it referring to the Kohen and the Levites, or maybe it's the Kohen and the Levites and then just the sons of Aaron, Aaron? I don't know. And I was,
Well, there's
I
a
don't know if
difference.
it applies to me. I don't know.
There's a difference in roles. And this is important we learn, by the way. Okay, you have, last night I said you have Aaron, you have Levi. That's the head of the tribe. Then you have Gershon, Merari, and then you have Kohat. Out of Kohat, you have Amram. Out of Amram, you have Moses, Miriam, and Aaron. Out of Aaron, you have the Kohen. So you got all this family, but only one line, one family becomes, and then out of the Aaron, you have 4 sons, 2 die, and then you have Eleazar and Itamar, 2 sons, and then during the time of David, you have 2 high priests, Abiathar and Zadok. Now, Adoniah, one of the sons of David, okay, he wanted to usurp the authority of David because he didn't like Solomon. So Abiathar, who's the son of Aaron, he stayed loyal with Adoniah, committing encroachment. God did not ask Adoniah to be king. It was Solomon. So Zadok stayed faithful. And that's rebellion. He stayed faithful to David because David was appointed by God. So he is sanctioned. And already David already picked his successor. That is called enthronement ceremony. And then Zadok stayed loyal to David, and by staying loyal to David, then the Lord says, because you were loyal to David, you were loyal to me, now you're going to officiate in the millennial reign. That's why from that moment on, the sons of Zadok were the ones officiating in the temple. And that's it, no one else. Anybody else is committing encroachment from the line of Zadok. In the first century, you have Ananias. He was a Sadokite. He was just corrupted. So that's how the line is breaking down. So you have of all 24 priestly courses, those are the sons, the 24 priestly courses come from the two sons of Aaron, Ithamar and Eleazar. It's not even talking about the rest of the Levites. And people don't know this. So when they look at the book of Hebrews, they say, oh, the whole Levitical priesthood is done away with. What? Not all the Levites are priests. And none of the priests, all the priests are Levites, but all the Levites are not priests. Only those people from the line of Aaron. So it's like saying all of you are one big family, okay, and only his sons can be the priests. So why get rid of all of you when in fact it's just one of his sons who's a knucklehead? That makes no sense. The Lord is trying to restore this because he ordained it. He ordained the high priesthood. So he's trying to restore it in the millennial reign when we come back on the earth. In the meantime, there's no temple. But we have a mediator in the heavenly realm doing the role of the high priest in the likeness of. So right now, this whole argument about priesthood or no priesthood, it only shows, I'm going to say it, can I? It's just the Christian in people and the anti-Semitic stuff. Anti-Semitism within the Hebrew roots, a Messianic movement is rampant. Thank you guys so much for having me. Pastor, I had a great time. It is a pleasure to be here.